Okay. I think this thing's on. I think I've clicked the right buttons. I think I've hit the go live. I've made sure you guys can see us, and I don't think I'm muted. So hi everyone. Welcome to the show. Dylan Bowser, nice to see you. Nice to see you, everyone who's coming in. Take your time. I know we're live a little early. It's a little before 5, but we'll do it. It'll be fun. It'll be great. We got a great guest list today and a great topic. So welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV, a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Today, we are going to be discussing something that we came across earlier in this week. Attention has been drawn to a third-party supplement for D&D called Forge of Foes. In this, there are several controversial articles and discussions, such as anti-colonialism in a D&D setting, as well as talk of such things as goblins, men's rights activists. Is this sort of thing appropriate for the D&D hobby? And by this sort of thing, I mean articles such as this, supplements such as this. Does this help expand people's ability to play the game? Or is it acting as a spoiler, as a ruination of the TTRPG, a corrupting influence, if you will? We're going to get into it, but first, we got lovely guests to introduce, and I want to give them each space and a spot to kind of tell people who they are, where you can find them, and most importantly, what are their thoughts on the subject at hand. We're going to start with Harmony. Go ahead, please.
And pronouns, please, Harmony.
Right. So first, my name is Harmony Ginger. I am Harmony_Ginger on YouTube, at GingerBlast on Twitter. First of all, I want to say that I have nothing against the lazy DM. I don't really know much about him. I don't wish to impugn his character, though I do disagree with the 4-page blurb about colonialism in his supplement. I believe that human history is full of war and horrors from the very beginning, and goblins, gnolls, orcs, and demons are not intended to represent real people, and they are representative of existential chaos and evil that inspires fear in people so that they watch over their children and tell them to stay out of the woods at night. Evils exist in literature and folklore, and they represent the oldest fantasy tropes that speak to the human condition and the fear of the unknown. This is not to say that you can't have an RPG campaign where goblins are good or gnolls only want pets and hugs. No one is stopping you from doing so. My contention is not that in every setting these monsters must be evil. However, there is nothing morally wrong with portraying monsters, even those vaguely shaped as humans, as evil creatures of the darkness.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, no stranger to my show, Staxioms. What you got for us? Who are you?
Hello.
What are your thoughts?
Hi. So I am here as part of the Woke Warriors. Here we are defending the Goblin rights activists, Goblin men's rights activists. Okay, so here's, I think, my main argument. I think that when people see arguments like this, when they see the Goblin men's rights activists, what they're really frustrated with isn't that politics isn't being brought into an RPG. What they're really frustrated with is shoehorning and not integrating your subject material into the world building writ large. Like, essentially, it feels out of place. It's not because it's woke. It's not because it's not political or dialectic or anything of the sort. It's simply just because it feels a little out of place. And if you just tweaked it so it fit the environment a little bit better, it could still be woke and you guys would have far less complaints. And I have numerous examples to show you guys why that would be the case.
Okay, we'll get into it, and I'm sure we'll get to those examples. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Next up, first time on my show, hopefully not the last, but we'll see. Richard Witters, please tell people who you are.
Hello.
And what are your thoughts here?
I'm Richard Witters. If you know me on Twitter or Instagram, I am a Zvart. I'm a small blue person.
No
I
one
worked
knows what that
on.
means.
I know. That's okay. They'll look it up. Yeah, I worked on Magic for about 7 years, D&D for about 7 years. I was concept artist, art director, world builder on both those brands to different degrees. So a lot of this stuff, when people were talking about it, I was kind of like, okay, I've obviously thought about this for a long time because I've had to put out products to like a very wide audience. So you think about this stuff, you try to figure out what you're going to do. How does it interact with the audience? How does the audience react to it? What kind of stuff do you want to do? So now I've heard a lot of people say, um, hey, stop the debate, just have fun, forget this stuff. And I totally get you. That's player perspective. I'm coming at it from like a creator perspective of like, I think these things are good to discuss, to make the products that we hope that the most people can be entertained by. So I'm kind of coming from a creator perspective in all this.
Okay, and we're going to be very curious to hear what you think of some of these things, but we'll get into it, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, another first-time guest, Jack, Chronicler of the Northlands, the Lost Lore Scholar himself. Tell people who you are, what you do, and why you're here.
Well, I chronicle the Northlands. It says it on the tin. No, my name's Jack. I like fantasy. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I talk on the internet about the hobby, about the genre fantasy in general is more my cup of tea. And I, for quite a while now, have been banging the drum of apolitical fantasy because I'm just sick and tired of the politics worming its way into my hobbies and my stories where they don't belong. That's as succinct as I can get it.
Fair enough. We will get into it when we get into it. Tyler, please.
All right, so average debate enjoyer, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, follow me on all that because I'm right about everything. So the monolithic entities to just that represent this evil that we're talking about here is just this kind of outdated, modern black and white us versus them, good versus evil storytelling, and that's the argument for colonialism. Essentially, is when we view ourselves as the good and the others as this monolithic bad, it allows us to justify bad actions against them, going and killing them, stealing their things. It's kind of the inherent evil is the idea of colonialism, as we are the good guys going to wrong the injustices in the world. Instead, from a storytelling perspective, I think we can look at it as like more to what society really is. We talked about the wars in society and whatnot being the precedent. People have always been fighting. We're not saying stop doing that. Look at these two civilizations. In almost every war, both sides envisioned themselves as the good guys. Both sides had nuance to their society where there were women and children and people that disagreed with the war and protested it. And I think carrying over that to have a fictional world that mirrors what the reality does includes your immersiveness, the diversity of thought, individualism within different cultures. It immerses you into this more. Also, like Staxioms said, I think this has a lot to do with the bad writing, like men's rights activist thing with the Goblin. Cringy because of the bad writing. If it wasn't so politically infused and injected full of those things, I think that, really at the end of the day, also that a lot of this comes down to the bad writing from the DM. When you have these monoliths of good versus evil, usually it's just this simplistic story told by somebody that's not that good at storytelling. If you take a look at other examples of fantasy like World of Warcraft, even before you could play the Death Knights and the Goblins and different things in there, there were factions within these different species. Some were good, some were bad, some you had to fight against because of X, Y, and Z. Some were on your side because of different reasons. Having that nuance mirrors reality and gives you a better immersive storytelling atmosphere.
Okay, again, we've drawn the lines. Okay, we're gonna get into it, but we got one more guest that must have his say. Confluence, take us away.
I am Confluence 358 on YouTube. I make political videos. Made a great video on Sam Hyde that you should all go and watch. My main argument is twofold. Firstly, there's undeniable racism and colonialist ideas that form the origins of modern day fantasy, the reverberations of which can be felt to the current day. There are harmful stereotypes and consequences from those stereotypes, both individually and culturally. And secondly, I'll be arguing practically. Adding nuance and depth to your games will just lead to better games. If you eschew the typical all orcs are evil stereotypes, then you're forced to give motivations and nuance and life to your world. Cartoonishly evil villains are fine for a children's game, but D&D is played by adults who can simply do better. Fighting against this, I think, is a fight for lazy DMs, unthinking players, and hackneyed storylines that follow the same tired tropes. And so I think we can make this not in a moral sense, but we can actually just imbue our games with more life and more realism to make them just simply better and have more fun doing it.
Okay, and with that, thank you for all being here. I'm really excited to have this discussion because I think there's a lot of different threads. One of the problems I had with coming up with the prompts and some of the questions is there are so many different layers to this that we can just touch on. But I wanted to start with something that you guys mentioned, that strictly good and evil and having all good and all evil is lazy or bad storytelling. Is that actually true? Let's start there.
Yes.
Staxioms says yes. Well, it's open discussion, so
Demonstrably
just
not
I-
true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I- sorry,
Demonstrably
I'll-
not true.
okay. Let's give it to Staxioms first to explain why, and then Jack can respond, and then again, if you want in, just let me know.
I mean, I think pretty clearly. I think that fantasy's world is usually a good, it's a good way to view the current world that you're in, and you can't relate to characters that don't make sense to you. And I think that if you look around, you don't see evil people. You see people with different motivations that conflict with each other, and sometimes those motivations end up with murder or death or you know uh, destruction. But I think that those people are internally motivated in a way that makes sense to them, that counters other people. And that is the root of kind of almost all civilizations that go against each other. I think that if you are world building, you should mimic the way that people actually interact with the world. And real people aren't evil. They are misinformed. They're in, whatever, they're misinformed, and they work against each other, and that makes
This is
for
a
a lot
very
more
big red herring.
understanding evil characters, antagonists that you can understand rather than just point at, call bad, and then kill. I
Okay.
think that that's lazy.
Jack, go ahead. You have some thoughts.
Well, firstly, before we continue, out of the three of you on that side, so to speak, which of you actually read or play fantasy, or read fantasy, play fantasy on a regular basis? Like, you all play D&D, or you're all part of
Yes,
the hobby, TTRPGs?
I
Yeah?
play like 3 times a week for like the
Nice.
last 10 years. Yeah.
Nice. I'm just seeing where we're at, because a lot of the times I get into these discussions and it's from people that don't.
Sure. I
But
will say,
so
I don't know
played
I don't know
once.
anything about the lore.
you played
Like,
once.
Yeah.
Bro, I love hentai.
Okay, that. Okay,
So
so
my
fair enough.
look, you can say, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that, this, that, and the other. That's all assertions, but you didn't really provide basis. I'm going to give you a concrete example of good versus evil fantasy. That's the most successful fantasy ever written. Is the
Lord of the Rings.
beginning of fantasy, exactly.
Sure.
And as soon as they started trying to do all of this nuance, et cetera, with it, and trying their best to bring in the character nuance, or what you are putting forward as character nuance, but what I actually call slop, it failed in the Rings of Power, because you took away
Okay.
what the mythology of this is, because fantasy is a representation of all of the world's mythology packaged for a modern audience, and it just so happens
Could
that
I-
mythology is good versus evil.
Let me
I'd like to
jump in
respond.
here real quick too.
Sure.
I just want to jump in about Lord of the Rings. So if you look if you go past Lord of the Rings into more somewhere all of Tolkien's other writings, you find evil bands of dwarves, evil bands of elves. Even in Lord of the Rings, in particular, the movies and the books, you have evil bands of men. This diversity, where we show that these races aren't a monolithic entity similar to a Sega Genesis game where you just get a swapped color palette and the same exact moveset.
So you don't need to go past Lord of the Rings. All you need to do is go to the part where Faramir explains that, Faramir or Sam, I'm conflating books and films, where they look at the dead Haradrim boy and say, would he not much rather have stayed home living in peace? But the whole point, the main thrust, and again, if you go into the minutiae there, you will miss the wood for the trees. The main thrust is good versus evil, the return of the king, and that is exactly what Tolkien wanted it to be. It is Eru winning over evil.
Sure. Could I jump in?
Sure, you can jump in, but I want to hear from the other people too. So I want
Totally.
to give it to Harmony after you, and then
Sure.
Richard, and then Confluence. But
So
go ahead.
I don't actually disagree. I do think that, and I am not a Lord of the Rings fan buff at all. Sorry. like I don't think it's for me. But as far as I'm aware, I
We're
think
not all
orcs
perfect.
were meant to be the evil race that like go against the other people. I hear that, and I don't think that I'm saying that you can't or shouldn't be able to have a campaign that's about good versus evil. I think if you want to do that, that's fine, and that's where you genuinely get your thrill. Okay, but I think
But
that these
I
guides,
think it's not very. The interesting thing is you're saying nuance, but the nuance in good versus evil is still there. To say
no,
that good versus evil
sure,
lacks nuance is actually a very unnuanced view.
that's fine. That's fine. If you want to say that yours is actually more nuanced and more interesting and artistic, that's fine. Like I think this is a subjective view, but I think people are a little tired of it, and I think that that's fine as well. People saying, "Hey, I actually don't like the good versus evil dichotomy.
Which
I
people?
would rather have a selfish villain who kind of misunderstands the population and due to things outside of his control accidentally creates chaos, and you have to stop it, even though he's kind of sympathetic." That I think is a little bit more interesting. And that's fine that you don't. I do. Okay. So that's how I'm going to pivot all of my stories that I write. So when I do that and I get a DM guide that's like, oh, hey, here's a better way to facilitate it. And you guys are like, shut it down. That doesn't make sense to me because I don't know
Don't
if I'm.
shut it down. We just laughed at it.
No,
Well,
good and evil.
to be
Sure,
clear,
come
I want to
come
read a
on a
quote
little
real
bit.
quick, just real quick. I'll read this. Gatekeeping is good. Limp-wristed permissiveness is what got us to this point. Weed them out table by table, make them uncomfortable, take away their fun, and above all, prevent items like this from being profitable. This is someone who's pretty big in the nerd community, if you will. I mean, they are trying to stop this,
Like
right?
you would obviously advocate.
No,
For
I want
lawsuits
Jack
that
to
change-
Jack to respond to this, right?
Yeah.
Like this is something that, like you say, no one's trying to stop you. Like I don't know. That sounds like they're trying to stop you.
I would be interested to know who that was from, because I think I can probably tell you.
Go guess.
No,
Let's see.
no, I won't.
Fair enough.
It's a friend of his.
That seems like a trap. But I will say, yeah, there are people who, chaps. What you need to remember is there are people other than me who are much more frustrated and a lot more passionate in that frustration. When you bring in, this is better, that's better, blah blah blah, and you start talking down to people who have played the game a certain way for, well, in my case, about 15, 20 years, it's a little bit, well, fuck you then. But I've spoken enough. Let somebody else.
I want to jump in on
Go ahead,
this Lord of the
Confluence,
Rings
and then I want to
thing.
hear from Harmony and Richard. But
Because
go ahead.
like Lord of the Rings is obviously the progenitor of modern fantasy, and
The single most successful fantasy property.
Yeah, I
still
give
to
it
this
all
day.
the credit. But I feel like to me it's similar in some ways to like looking at like Hitchcock and his like horror movies. It's like, yes, they're good at the time and they are still good, but if you tried to do that now, it would come across as hackneyed. It wasn't hackneyed when Tolkien did it because it was a novel thing. But so if we have these simplistic storylines, that might work for back then, but I think our postmodern society, we crave nuance. We want detailed characters. There's a reason why things like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones are so popular, right? Walt Whitman in Breaking Bad isn't just like some evil guy. You can see him. It's believable.
Walt Whitman.
Hold on. Just let him finish. Like,
oh, did I say Walt Whitman?
You did.
Think about the poet, Walter White.
Yeah.
Okay, you said, hold on, Game of Thrones flopped?
Yeah, it flopped hard on the last season. Everyone hated it.
It might not like the last season. But it was a
hold on, let's give it to
success.
Harmony. Go ahead,
Flopped
Harmony.
isn't the right
Yeah.
word.
Harmony.
Flops might not be
Okay.
the right word, but the storytelling is awful.
I have a lot to say about this, so I'm gonna try and make it fast. But so first of all, Staxiom, when you were talking about shades of moral grayness when it comes to like people versus people and country versus country, I agree with you. But we're not talking about people. We're talking about gnolls and goblins, and we're talking about monsters. And what you said is entirely true when it applies to humans, but these aren't humans, and they're not meant to be humans. And there is room for existential evil in gray storytelling and in very good storytelling. Let's go back to the example that someone just brought up. Wait, I gotta finish this thought or I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to go back to an example that someone just brought up of A Song of Ice and Fire. And I actually might be in the minority because I enjoyed the books. I thought they were quite good. The ending of the show was
Everyone
bad.
thinks the books are good, but yes, you're not the minority. That's just
shades of moral grayness throughout it, and that's a really good thing. I mean, you get to see all sides of the war, but There is the existential evil of what exists beyond the wall that at first to us is a mystery. We don't know much about it. We don't know exactly what these White Walkers are or why they're coming. We don't know what they want. To us, they just seem like an existential threat to humanity, an evil. And you know what? That's what the player characters are going to know in your game. They're not going to know what the White Walkers want or why they're coming, or like maybe they just want hugs. They don't know. They just know that the White Walkers are coming to kill everything. And that's the storytelling right there. That's the most compelling part to me of Game of Thrones. And there's lots of cool stuff between like the moral grayness and the and like the everything from Ned Stark's death on is great until the end. The end sucks. But the most compelling part is when shades of moral gray combine in order to defeat evil. They have to put aside their differences because there is an evil in that world. And that's what
before
we're
the
talking about.
response, I just want to read these super chats because he's bugging me in DMs. Pondering
Make some money.
politics for $10. Speaking of villains, Wick asked the panel, but especially Staxioms, if we can all agree that ultimate villainy was reborn Emperor Palpatine.
Rise of Skywalker.
Rise of
I know it's
Skywalker.
always about Rise of Skywalker.
$20 from Stug to
Jesus
say,
Christ.
yeah, $20 from Stug to say it is indeed 5 minutes in. He said if Lord of the Rings would come up within the first 5 minutes, I'd get $20. Thank you, Jack. I did not say that. I want to make it clear that Jack was not made aware or prompted for
I'm
this.
gonna get my split from that, right?
No. And then $5 from Gelatinous Rube. We know about MRA goblins, but has Confluence asked Harmony about the ongoing situation with mind goblins?
Nice.
Okay.
Mind Goblin these nuts.
Yes.
Hey, okay.
Nice.
Staxioms, you
You
had the
guys not get
response.
that? Okay.
I was interrupted.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Got
First
me.
off to Josiah, shut the fuck up about Rise of Skywalker. I am so goddamn tired of you jizzing all over that movie. Okay. Second, I will respond to Harmony. Firstly, I could be wrong. I'm not the Lord of the Rings buff here. Is Lord of the Rings not meant to resemble other people? Like these other races, these like goblins. I like.
Tolkien
So-
explicitly
I
said
want-
that in the letter.
I want to
that
be
the-
clear.
that the orcs were based on, I think, Mongolians.
If you say Mongolians, I'm going to correct you.
Okay,
I mean, I can read the quote.
Okay.
You
Would that
can,
help?
you'll get it. You can, but without the
Okay.
context, I'll tell you
I
what he said
can't-
there. He
Let me
said
read the quote.
Hold-
The
he
orcs
told
are
you
definitely.
Hold on.
here.
Whoa. One at a time. Read the quote, then we can get the correction from Jack, and then we're gonna finish Staxioms. You guys
Okay.
gotta let Staxiom finish.
Again, not even saying Tolkien was racist, but this is a quote in a private letter. The orcs are definitely stated to be the corruptions of the human form seen in elves and men. They are or were squat, broad, flat-nosed, sallow-skinned, with wide mouths and slant eyes. In fact, degraded and repulsive versions of the, to Europeans, least lovely Mongol types.
Base.
Now,
That's a little sus, if you ask
no,
me.
it's not.
It's
a little
really
not.
not.
Hold on. Let Jack
Steel
respond.
man
Jack.
that, yeah.
Jack.
Wait,
go
wait.
ahead.
I would like
Okay.
to finish my thought though.
Yeah, we'll get it to you as soon as he responds. Jack responds, and then we're gonna give it back to
The
Stax.
only way to respond to something like that is if you want to put the suspicion on Tolkien, put words in his mouth, then you are more than welcome to, sir. However,
It's a
anyone
direct
who will
quote. I'm not putting
charity,
any words in his
anyone that
mouth.
I can direct quote many things and make things sound quite bad. Anyone that would take Tolkien and the entirety of his work would know that he is using descriptors to help someone understand what an orc would look like. You'll note he said the least lovely, which means there must be most lovely. So
Oh my
Oh,
god.
come on.
Okay.
Are you for
So-
real?
Okay, no, I'm gonna dip with this. This isn't a
someone
Tolkien debate.
doesn't bend the knee. Oh no!
This isn't a debate on whether Tolkien's racist. We can have that another day if you'd like. But
You
today
would
we're talking
be-
about storytelling. I want
You would
to,
be
yeah,
very
I want
wrong
to,
to
I want to
think
make sure
Tolkien's
Staxioms gets a
racist.
chance to finish his
So,
thought, and then I want to address
here's what I would
Harmony.
say.
Yeah.
I think that Harmony, I don't think you guys are. I think for some reason, like D&D means something to you that it's not to me, which is fine. Like I'm not trying to shit on you guys, but like for me, it's a facility for storytelling and world building. I fully use the mechanics and I ignore the lore. And in every single world that I build, I find monsters the least interesting part of the story, and I always have villains be human beings. Now, you can not like that. You don't have to be a part of my DM sessions ever. You don't have to be a part of my group. You don't have to be a part of my campaigns. But like, if I want advice on how to build a constructive world with human beings as villains who are empathetic and make sense to the characters, and you can understand their motivations, I don't know why having a guide is so awful.
But they're not saying that though. They're saying in the guide, don't have gnolls say gnoll bandits. They're specifically
If-
talking about monsters.
If I could
It
jump
it's
in,
a
Well, hold on.
guide.
Give it to
It's
Richard.
a
when
Give it to
suggestion.
Richard.
It's not a thing you have
This
to
isn't-
Hold
follow.
on. Hey. Richard's trying to talk, and Richard gets to talk when he wants to talk. So, Richard, go ahead and talk.
Oh, I'm just trying to jump in because I've been waiting.
Yeah,
Um,
Go ahead. Now's your chance.
So like I said, I'm coming at this from like a game developer point of view. So what I see is several different products. So you have mechanical books that would be like the player's handbook, the monster manual, things like that. Those tend to be light on narrative. Now, those are generally, you're thinking a lot of new players will use these books to onboard themselves. So when you're kind of not nuanced there, it's because of that audience. You're sort of like dwarves live in the mountains, elves live in the forest. This is your starting point. This is your setup space. When you move into another product, which is an adventure or a setting, then you can get into nuance. And you can have subsets, for example, the drow. Like the biggest culture of drow is not a good culture. But there's a subculture of drow who follow Ellistry who are actually good, right? So it's like, okay, there's nuance in this setting. That's great. Those mechanical books are just meant to give you the starting point. And then, so it's mechanical books which lack nuance because they're just to start you out. There's the adventures and settings where you can add the nuance in. And then there's your home game where you can customize it to exactly what you want. So to me, that's kind of how I see it.
How does this apply in the
If you
context
wanna-
of the discussion? Just real quick, Richard. When it comes to the discussion of this third-party supplement, what kind of which niche does that fill, and do you think it, from what you've read, fills it well?
I think from what I understand, it's sort of a mechanical expansion book. So to me, and I think that may be why some people are seeing it as out of place, because it's addressing sort of a nuanced way to play the game, but it's also outside of the game. If you took that sort of thing and said, I'm going to make a setting and it's not going to have colonialism in it, I think people would say, oh, that could be cool, right? But to me, it's sort of like not in the right place. And I see Sly Flourish as another person who's trying to make games, and I get no pleasure in them being drawn in to like a mess. But I've thought a lot about, you know, like I said, I've worked on some big brands, and you're always nervous about, will the audience take this right? I don't want to make anybody feel shitty, you know? So you think of those things, but you also think of like, what can I do in the different spaces?
Okay. I do want,
Could I-
just for everyone's, and then I'll let you go, Staxioms, but I do want
Yeah.
to read a quote from the anti-colonial play section that might help frame this a little bit, and we can kind of maybe discuss that. And it's from the third paragraph in, and it says this. It says, the ongoing legacy of colonialism is the foundation of a great deal of what's wrong with the world, and a book like this clearly is not the venue to try to fix what's wrong with the world. However, as gamers, we can, should, and must think about how our experience of the real world feeds into the worlds we create together. We need to understand the ways in which the traditions of colonialism hardwired into common culture and media can easily make us embrace potentially hurtful ideas, even without meaning to. Why is this a bad paragraph? Go ahead. Whoever wants. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a
Oh.
bad paragraph, so I would.
Sure.
I'll turn it over to them.
I think
It goes off
I
the
think it's a
rails,
preachy
right?
paragraph.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it goes off the rails at the point where it says, this probably isn't the place to address this, but here I'm going to try to address it. So I'd say that's, that realization of this is a long, nuanced conversation, but I'm going to try to fit it in a sidebar. And if I was an editor, I'd be like, that sounds like a bad idea. If this isn't the spot for a nuanced conversation, maybe take it somewhere else.
See, I read that
So
as
I have
just
a
saying
question.
there's no way to possibly fix it in this one place, but we're
Right.
each responsible to decolonize our own lives. And if we can do that in our games and fight against bioessentialism and race realism and make people feel more comfortable, then why not? So I don't think it's saying I shouldn't
There
even be
are
talking about this. This is just
lot
like,
of
this is a
buzzwords
small
here.
part that I can
Okay,
do.
I have a
in
question.
this-
I have a
in the right
question. Can I-
direction.
Your
Can I jump in?
buzzwords made me cringe, and I'm on your side. Can we move away from the buzzwords and
jump
we'll
in?
talk about the ideas
I
behind it?
agree. Could I jump in?
Staxioms, go ahead.
Do you want to come over here, man?
Okay, I have a question. I have a question for Harmony and what do you want me to call you? Lost Lord Scholar?
Jack's
Great.
fine.
Jack. Great. Jack and Harmony. Question. Do you think there's any fantasy or fictional stories that are destructive in some sense, where it's like that was racist, homophobic, bigoted? It doesn't even have to hit those buzzwords. You can say destructive in some sort of sense, where it's kind of on our responsibility as human beings to say, let's not do that. Do you think there's any examples that like
In
that might be the
fantasy?
case, or is it fully a place where you can shut off your brain and it doesn't matter?
In fantasy
Sure.
specifically?
I fictional, anything fictional.
Oh, anything fictional? I mean, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I've certainly read something before where I thought, this is probably extremely inappropriate and probably should not have
Right.
been published. I'll give you an example, actually.
Mhm.
Here's my example, and this can be a controversial example because I used to actually really love this author. He was one of my first fantasy authors that I really got into, Piers Anthony. Um, I really do not like Piers Anthony, and I think that a lot of his stuff maybe should have gotten another editor because a lot of it does broach themes of that we probably can't talk about on YouTube involving children. And it
I was going to
was
ask for
marketed,
elaboration, but okay, fair.
no, there's some really gross, perverted stuff in there.
Right.
And he had like hundreds of books, and they were all on like they were brightly colored under the A section in the sci-fi and fantasy
Mhm.
aisles, and it was and I was drawn to them as a teenager, and I thought they were incredibly harmful to my development. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Sorry.
look back, very gross, but
I agree with
yeah.
that. I
Mhm.
would put like I think of like Song of the South like almost immediately. It was like a
Okay,
Disney movie that
that
was
was the
like
first I thought of, but see, well,
celebrating a
mhm.
fucking slave, and he's like zippity doo dah, I fucking love to be a slave, and it's not
Ah,
all that
yeah,
bad. Don't listen to all that propaganda about from the north. It was
okay.
crazy. And that was made by Disney. And I think that we can collectively say, hey, that's probably not good for public education. That's probably not good for what it means to be a human being. And we can't just say art is accepted. Sorry, I think if we take art seriously, which I think is a good thing, we should also say that art can impact the way that we view other
Just to
people.
ground this in the discussion we're having
Yeah.
now,
Mhm.
give us an example that you would say that is destructive from D&D.
I think that calling uh races is fucking crazy. Like completely different species that can't interbreed, that have like their own mind of their own, and some
Except
of
they
them,
can.
I think calling them species, one, biologically actually correct, and two, just like I think that it kind of feeds into ideas that some races like exist with a specific morality and understanding and culture that's like completely distinct and biologically distinct from the others. So I think it's fine to go, hey, why are we calling this race, by the way? One, that's wrong. And two, we don't need to do that. That feels bad too. So let's
I
just
want
Yeah,
to
change
I
it to
get the other
offer
side to
species.
Yeah.
response. Go ahead.
So, when it comes to races and species, this is kind of a moot point for me. Like, I don't particularly care. Races has kind of been long used, and you could probably technically argue that elves and dwarves are races because they can breed with humans, or at least elves can. And I mean, there's that. But when it comes to species, dude, I have a game behind me that has like blobs and calls them races. Like, we know what it means. I don't particularly care about the wording.
This is exactly what I brought up in my video on this subject. In that we don't need to be talked down to about this. The genre is well developed enough now that race is an accepted term, and people realize that. By the way, when we say race, we don't mean different skin colors of humans. We mean elves, dwarves,
I
blah blah
think
blah blah blah.
Hold
I
on,
think you
hold on.
do a
hold on.
weird double talk here where you're essentially saying, "Hey, look, we've been playing with it for 20 years. Not everyone has been playing with it for 20 years. I play with kids at work.
No, I said the
My work,
genre was well
it's well established.
developed.
I understand, but I
Yeah.
play with kids at work at a
Also,
treatment
if
center, and
okay,
those
but
kids,
if you want to take species, I'm going to assume you're talking about sci-fi. You think of the children, I suppose, but if you say species to me, I think you mean a sci-fi game.
What
I'm
you're
just can we not update it a little bit and just say, hey, it's
Hey,
weird that a
if-
black
if-
kid's
if
gonna
well,
be
let me
like, oh,
ask.
this is a
Hold on.
race?
Let me
Owen,
ask.
if
Let me
you wanna go ahead and
just
call
real quick.
Species too.
Just real quick. But what would be inherently wrong? Just to answer the question to Jack there. What would be inherently wrong if they just changed it to species? Didn't they
What's
actually
wrong?
do that in WotC?
They did.
Yeah.
They did. It's wrong because
It's wrong.
you said there they can't interbreed when they can. It's hard. And in fact, in order to be anti-racist, WotC exterminated the half-breeds. So you know,
In a game, gang, they didn't actually wipe out anyone, but yeah, fair enough.
We are well off the reservation though. We've gone from let's talk
Yeah.
about monsters and it's okay to have evil existential threats to make things go bump in the night to, by the way, if you don't agree, we're going to imply that you're a racist.
Yeah, I was trying to take us back to that. So I'm going to go against your argument. 52% of violent crimes come from the 13% of Middle Earth's orc population. Real quick.
What?
So
Hilarious.
Is that an American thing?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you are still framing these.
He's
groups-
calling you a racist. Just so
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, I got
okay,
that. That's
get to
all
your
you guys
point,
really
Tyler.
have.
Come on, please.
Yeah. So you're looking at these groups. They're still forming the monolith. You're still saying that they're more inherently evil than the others, and that is this.
The orcs
undynamic
of Middle
evil.
Earth were bred to be evil killers.
That's.
yes.
I was going to make that point.
I would also like to say,
from the
while
movie,
we're back
actually.
on orcs and the Mongol comment that was made, because I kind of got cut off there. If orcs are Mongols, why aren't they on horseback firing arrows? That's because they're not.
They
when
ride
people
dogs.
create,
That's for real.
when people,
That's a real comment you made.
Hey,
Well,
Right,
hold
yeah,
on.
Not
Stop.
human beings
Stop.
from the-
Stop.
God's
Stop. Stop. Stop.
sake.
Stop. Stop.
Oh,
Stop. Stop.
no,
Stop.
let's all act outraged so we can't get a word in
Lost
edgewise.
Lord Scholar. I've muted them. Go ahead. Finish your point, but then we'll unmute them.
I'm going to say that when people create a fantasy world, the orcs in my world are atrocious monsters. They rape and they pillage, and they come from a deity's blood that means they are biologically predisposed to being brutal monsters. The first book in this series I'm working on is called The Blight of Savagery, because these things are objectively evil in the cosmology that I have written. And if you want to say that's this, that, or the other thing, you go right ahead, but I'm going to write a good versus evil story.
So the orcs were created as a parody of the dwarves.
The orcs were created as a
Elves.
parody of the elves.
Oh, the elves. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misspoke. So the orcs are created as a parody of the elves
By?
to be that good and evil dichotomy. Yes.
Who were they created by?
Was it Morgoth?
Kind of. They were sort of taken as elves and tortured into orcs, some
Yeah.
say. Tolkien changed his mind a lot about this.
There was, I don't
He also
remember exactly
actually
off-
said that there is redemption for the orcs should Eru will it, but we don't know if Eru wills that. So
I wanted to focus more on the Uruks because we're talking about the Holy Trilogy more than we are the books here. So the Uruks
I
were
would talk about the
created.
books.
They were created and incepted into. They're the victims in this story. If they weren't created,
Tell that to the
enslaved-
farms they're raising and the women they're killing and
They were
the
created
men of
and
Rohan they
enslaved
destroyed.
from birth, from their inception. They're
Yes.
the victims. They're the ones that need the care. They need to be rescued. They're child soldiers.
You can't.
Jack,
mate.
Jack, do you actually not see the value then, even from what you guys are saying, that there have been circumstances that led these evil creatures to be evil? Don't you think there could be depth in storytelling in unpacking that and talking about the moral luck of it from a philosophical point of view? If
You know,
you're
the
born into these
the really
environments?
in-depth storytelling that you get out of the orcs comes toward the end of the Return of the King, where Sam is trying to rescue Frodo from those two orc captains whose names escape me. And you can hear them arguing and talking about maybe we should run away together. Do you know what they want to run away from the war to do? To rape and pillage somewhere else.
Right, but I'm saying why we're not like confined to that
You
being
are-
all of our stories. Why not tell more complex stories where we focus on the fact of why these people are in that position in the first
mean,
place?
you are-
Why do we have
well,
to?
for
I don't want
one,
to trigger
you're-
Tyler
Oh,
again.
yeah,
but
you
why
gotta
do we
let
have
him
to have
finish.
a race realism aspect to this? Can it just be that culturally these orcs could come from a bad place, but then maybe you have some orcs that surprise
write
you?
it.
Like storytelling is all about reversing
write it.
expectations.
Go and write it.
We
Well,
gotta do.
that's okay.
that's
I
how
want
I
to.
do play.
I would like a DM guide, and then everyone makes fun of it on. It's like, what the fuck? I'm just
Yeah.
doing the thing that I'm doing. Like, don't try to pull the isolationist route. Like, we can just do our own thing. And you can do your
you
own
are
thing.
allowed to do your own thing, but it's still open to criticism. If I
Of
read
course.
it and I think it's silly, I'm gonna go, that's silly.
Of course.
And I think this.
So,
I think if you go into this hobby specifically, sort of the milieu of it, and you call everyone that's playing a certain way colonialist, which has some very stark implications behind it, then I think we have a right to go, you're silly.
Yeah, but who's doing that? Who's calling the players that are playing colonialist? They're
the
saying
bloke
that
who
the
wrote the book.
framework is colonialist, which it
Oh,
undeniably
the
is.
weasel words from that.
That's not weasel words. That's just facts. Does the article
change-
say the average
Okay.
player base are a bunch of racists?
I
It
do
doesn't say
want
that.
to. I do
That's
want
true.
to. I do want to dial it back, and I want to get back to kind of like the storytelling aspect of this, less from a culture war perspective and more from a on the table perspective. Just look, the culture war's fun, but right. Richard, you were trying to get in here, but I do have a question. So.
Yep. Yeah, just a quick thing. Like we are talking about games, right? So I'm not a fan of extortion and murder. But if I sit down to play a gangster game, I don't think I'm into it now, or that it's gonna make me into it. It's just a fantasy. So like some of these things model back in history. D&D's sort of core setting is actually not colonialist, which is probably 15th century to mid 20th century. It would be more like feudal medieval, like by default. So, and I don't like feudal medieval. I don't want to live in that system either, right? But you're pretending to walk around in this world. That's just the default thing. The same as if you said it's a sci-fi setting and it's on a communist space station.
When
It's
you
like,
play-
okay,
But the
Yep.
problem with this is
stop. I have a question for everyone, and I would like to ask the question, just to kind of again set this. And I know you guys want to fight, and I'm here for it. I love the energy, but I want to do a little productiveness. Harmony, you mentioned Game of Thrones and the White Walkers, the
I was responding to. Oh yeah.
the threat beyond the wall, right? Basically, and how that was the overarching evil that aided the story. And fair, right? It does work for the setting. It does help tie the story together. But there are, I would assume you would just agree with me here, and maybe you won't, that there are plenty of stories that could be told without that overarching evil. And in fact, that for some people, they're tired of it. They're just tired of it. They're tired of like, oh, there's the big bad supervillain that's always, it's like the Brandon Sanderson Mistborn books. Are you familiar with them? Did you read them?
I read the first one.
Well, at the end of the first one, right, they kill the bad guy, and it turns out the bad guy was holding back. Oh, spoiler, gang! But it's like this book's been out like 20 years now, so you'll be fine. It turns out that the Empire guy was his death unleashed an ancient evil that was much more complex, right? And that is, it's just a story that's been told so much. What is wrong with the Sly Flourish thing saying, we're going to tell a different story? Is that
There's
insulting
nothing
to
wrong
you?
So there's nothing wrong with telling a different story. There's nothing
Sure.
wrong with not having an existential evil in your story. I am defending the idea that having an existential evil in your story is not necessarily bad storytelling, and in fact, it has precedence from the beginning of time. It's that is like all of human history. We've been telling these stories, and also it's important to recognize that Dungeons and Dragons literary history is not just confined to Lord of the Rings. While Lord of the Rings is a fine trilogy, I mean, there's also other authors that it was inspired by. Like, we're not even mentioning here Lord Dunsany, A. Merritt, or Paul Anderson. Like, these guys, there's plenty of old fantasy literature, and lots of it has some good versus evil in it, and there's all sorts of existential evil in these stories, and it inspires D&D as it is now. Like I said, it's much broader than just Tolkien. The idea that we're tired of this and we're going to tell something new. Okay, tell something new, and people are telling new stories, of course,
But then they get dragged on it.
people will always. I don't think anyone's dragging people for telling stories without evil. People are dragging people for saying you can't have an existential evil in your stories, or saying that gnolls or goblins are evil.
Yeah, hold on.
That's,
Or implying you're racist for having existential
hold on.
threats.
Good and evil are a theme. They're in everything. even when there's this argument that we're making, we're still arguing that good and evil be present. We're just saying that an entire race, an entire civilization of people that look a certain way are evil by default. Like, if you look at Game of Thrones, yes, there was this overarching good and evil theme that showed up in season 7 and 8 when everyone says the show sucked. The dragons showed up season 5, 6, 7, 8 when everyone said the show started to suck and sucked. What got people with the first 4 seasons, where there's almost no magic, almost no dragons, almost no mysticism, and it was a very deep political, intellectual story where in the first season, the monolith, the archetypical good guy, got his head cut off. And then everyone else from that point on was a gray area character that could have been
Jon Snow.
Yeah, it was a sympathetic. Well, yeah, he was off to the other side. But I'm talking about.
I'll be honest,
in
I didn't
Winterfell.
like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I'm just in King's Landing. The whole thing was a bunch of gray hero anti-heroes or sympathetic villains, and it
Yes,
really did well. 'cause
and-
There was a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah, let's go on this Game of Thrones. And the books will never complete because George R.R. Martin doesn't know how to tie that up. But we've had since the very beginning, the first scene in the first book was a guy fleeing the wall from existential evil. There was always this overhanging of existential evil over the whole story. Like, there was always this idea that these fights between the Lannisters and the Starks, they don't matter because whoever wins is going to have to deal with the White Walkers. That was a theme in the story since the first bit. That was like the prime theme. Like, why do we care about this when there is existential evil overhead? Anyway, I'm sorry, I've gone on too long.
Yeah, well, I wanna jump in on that because I think I don't want to speak on behalf of my panelists, but I think all three of us are fine with there being a good versus evil on a more abstract level. I think the problem is when you enter a game world, you're dealing with characters that have agency and are sapient beings, and then to apply those broad concepts of good and evil completely onto them is when it becomes lazy and hackneyed. So it's totally fine to have good and evil. I'm not saying we need to have moral relativistic D&D games, but I'm saying that if you have goblins that have free will in the D&D world and appear as normal and humanoid, then they shouldn't just be cartoonishly evil. I think it's a better story to explore what their motivations are. So I don't think any of us are saying you just can't have good and evil on an ontological level.
So
Can I throw in on that for
well,
just a second?
Yes, but then
okay.
I want to give a chance for Harmony to respond, and then Jack's had his hand up, and I have a quote, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I think entertainment is a sine wave. Sometimes it can be a really short sine wave with one person, or a broad sine wave across a big audience. So, a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which is great, it's got a lot of nuance, it's got in-depth characters, all that. Love it. And sometimes I play Doom, right? And these are just 2 games, and I might go for a long time doing this, and then go for a long time doing the other one. So it's sort of a sine wave that comes and goes. And when you're making games, you want to kind of see, if you see that people are bored of this, I would say, for me as a creator, that's a time to make something, right?
Sure.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, but the problem here, and why we're having this discussion, is there seems to be not only a I don't like this, but a more of a I don't like this and no one else should like this either, from both sides, in my opinion, right? And I think that drives a lot of the animosity. It drives a lot of the conflict, interpersonal conflict among creators, among players, and I'll just say it. I think it's bad for the hobby. I think we need to stop being so, I don't know, angry about what someone else is doing in their own home at their own table. You're not at the table, right? Why does it bother you that someone is having a goblin men's rights activist attacking a village? What's it to you? Go ahead.
It's more like, I think you're kind of mischaracterizing the argument of the people that want to get rid of it. They're saying that this thought process and thought pattern of labeling an entire race of people based on this evil monolith of forming the worst characterization of them as you can forms bad habits that could be carried over into the real world about other groups of people. And I mean, it's tribalism. We see that.
From our perspective, we just want to kill some orcs and not be called racist.
Yeah, but there's nothing that you think that you do at a D&D table that's going to transmit at all to the outside world. You think that
let me say this. I have written some incredibly dark stuff that I have shocked myself with.
Sure.
I would never do that. And
No,
yes,
that's
that
not-
is
hold on.
exactly what
That's
you
not
are
my
implying.
question, Jack.
The
That's not my
question was, do you
I've
think
written
that
about
anything
murder.
I would
I've written
do...
about suicide. I haven't murdered
Yeah,
or
okay.
killed myself.
Okay, I have written
Thank God.
about racism, sexism, and all the
But
rest of it. It's something I would never do.
As have I. But what I'm trying to say is, do you not think that there's any sort of moral implication that we get from the stories that we consume that translate into the way that we treat other people? You think there's nothing?
Now, you're putting words in my mouth there, because last I checked, what I was trying to say was if I want to make an evil race of beings, such as demons, which are cosmologically, objectively evil, then that does not translate to me thinking that actual people, based on certain immutable characteristics, are certain ways.
I agree
at
with
all.
you.
Now, I will make sure that I'm very clear with you. I think you can get moral lessons from the literature that you consume. However, I also think that those moral lessons can be wrong.
I'll put something
What
in
is
both
that?
your mouths.
Well, a
What
lot
does
of
that-
people.
what does
Hold
that
on, a
mean?
lot of people went in, but yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean,
Sure.
Jack?
Let's take a thief character. He's stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, blah, blah, blah. Robin Hood. Isn't that a lovely story? Stealing's wrong.
Base.
What the fuck?
Base.
Wait,
Okay,
wait,
no,
wait,
let him
wait, wait.
else Let him elaborate. Go ahead. Stealing is
So
wrong.
the
Fair.
moral lesson there isn't that you should steal. The moral lesson there is that the wealthy should not lord it over the poor.
Ah, I see
Right.
what you're saying. So to kind of get what you're saying that people can derive the wrong moral lesson from a
Of course.
story that's trying to give a more
And
overarching
to
lesson.
try and make it out as if art does not impact the human experience or any way, or try and make out the fact that I would believe that is quite silly, because obviously it does. I mean, the whole point, the whole issue that I take with this anti-colonial gaming, one, it frames colonialism in a way that is very beneficiary to the modern American left. Being a Brit doesn't really bother me too much. But also, it kind of says that if I was to play my game in a certain way, then I'm a bad person, and I think fuck you. That's how
Yeah.
I read it.
Okay,
have
I
a
want
question.
Staxioms, you
I'd like to
respond, then I
reframe the
want to go to
conversation.
Harmony, and I want to go to Confluence. Yeah.
I'm actually looking for a reframing, and I kind of want to pivot a little bit. So if we want to stick on this, if people have something to say,
Oh yeah, if
Yeah.
you could skip
go
me.
ahead, Harmony.
I just wanted to respond to Confluence from a little bit earlier. He was talking about having a, good goblin, or having the goblins, or whatever the existential threat is, have some
Just really
moral
quick.
nuance.
Thank
to
you for the
them.
50 memberships, J-Mac, and I'll get to
Oh.
the super chats soon. But really appreciate the money. Give me more of that.
Um,
It's always morally good. Anyway, continue, Harmony.
Right. But he was speaking of that, and I think it's very important to
Hmm.
consider that while these evil creatures might have nuanced reasons for attacking, like the player characters, from the perspective of the villagers, of the player characters, we don't know why the goblins are sacking the village. They just know that goblins are attacking. They will fight off the goblins, and perhaps later they find out, oh, they were in a cult that was mind controlling them or something, or they were, or there could be a variety of reasons. We don't know. Because when goblins are attacking, when White Walkers are coming, when there's an existential threat to your existence, you don't care why. And the player characters won't know why until later, probably.
Did you cheer when
but-
Jordan Neely died?
Who?
Oh.
They are not
I'm very-
politics guys.
No, what?
They
No,
don't know.
I'm sorry.
nothing to
alright.
do with
There is actually an example.
I don't
Harmony,
cheer when
that-
anybody dies.
I'm
That's
sorry. I was being an
that's an
asshole.
asinine question.
There is an example of what you're talking about, Harmony, in the Legend of Drizzt. When Drizzt first exits the Underdark and he goes to the surface, a village that he wants to help sees a drow, knows when drow appear, people die, and try and fight him off. And they hire a mercenary that chases him to the ends of the earth. And if that village hadn't scared Drizzt off, then they wouldn't have been killed by gnolls and other monsters. But also, on the same flip, in that same adventure, when Drizzt first exits the Underdark, he meets two gnolls, and these gnolls try and ask him along, do you want to come and kill these villagers with us, Drizzt? Because you're a dark elf and we're gnolls. So, it's like two separate groups of both evil and good-aligned creatures look at Drizzt and interpret who he is based on his race, which is great. The Legend of Drizzt books are good. If you want a nuanced dark elf, go read the Legend of Drizzt.
Can
And
I just say? Can I just say that Wick
No,
called
hold
me
on.
the virgin of the panel,
You are.
and that is such bullshit.
Harmony.
Like fucking listen.
You're
That's
speaking over women right now. Harmony, finish your thought.
My other point was that there is the reason a character like Drizzt or like Zaknafine or Jarlaxle or someone is extraordinary is because they are raised in a society that is very evil. Like if you've read about the Drow society, it's an incredibly horrific place to be raised. I mean, they're almost universally evil. But the reason that you're able to have these characters that buck the stereotypes, that actually come out and become extraordinary characters, are because of that.
I think I do agree with what you're saying, Harmony. I think that was one of the things I disagreed in the article is the whole when it says don't just say goblins attack the village, say refugee goblins or men's rights goblins. But the truth is that can be immersion breaking because you just see goblins attacking. You might not know that they're men's rights goblins, but I think it can be interwoven into the story. So maybe when you capture the goblins, maybe you interrogate them, maybe you find signals of something and it can tie into a higher story plot because all this is constructed. So I think the DM can go out of his way to make these examples more interesting. You could maybe kill a bunch of gnolls and then go into a next room and see a bunch of gnoll babies, and now
And
you're
kill them
forced
too.
with that moral weight of like, should I kill those too? Are those living
Yes.
creatures? Like you can do all these reversals. You could have an elven village that seems like they're good, but then you find there's a subterranean world of slaves that they're running their whole system on, and realize that they're the bad things. Like I'm just saying we should have more of these kind of flips of expectations that'll make better story worlds. We don't have to play like that, but I think anytime we add nuance, I think it's going to be like a better game and a more richer experience.
Even
I
that, you're
I have a question.
suspecting. Sorry, go for it.
No. I've been talking way more.
Someone go.
I was
Okay.
going to say, even
Okay,
then,
Richard,
so
Richard.
I was gonna say that's what you just described there. Totally agree with. That's entertainment. If I tell you the goblins are attacking the village because they're trying to protect their babies, then that is the only thing I can tell. That's the only story I can tell. If I say the goblins are attacking the village and they're trying to kill us, and then you fight the goblins, you kill some of them, drive some others off, then you find out later they were just trying to protect their babies, and then you're like, oh shit, how do I fix this mess, right? And then you go through the whole story. And D&D, I found anyway, a lot of it is characters making a mess and then fixing their mistakes. They piss off the town guard, they piss off the thieves guild, they piss off the merchants guild. They mistake shit. They let a demon out by mistake. They do all that stuff. You let them do that, you let them make the mistakes, and you walk through it. And to me, that's super fun.
See, that's the problem though, is even your compromise is still guilty because you're presuming guilt based on race.
There is
Like,
never enough purity. There is
Right.
never enough purity.
No,
If
not
goblins-
really.
if
Because it could be
goblins are-
goblins, or it could be
Oh.
somebody is attacking me and trying to kill me.
not even attacking
So-
you. They were talking about interrogating. They see somebody that you just
Okay,
happen to be this
can-
race. Let's interrogate.
Can
you.
we do a quick thought experiment on that?
Fair enough.
On
Go
what
ahead.
you've just said.
No, go ahead,
let's-
please. I'm
Let's
curious.
say that you are a young man just come of age. You're due to be married to the love of your life, and let's say actually you've already knocked her up. Let's keep that quiet. The wedding's soon. We won't worry about that too much. Okay. You are on guard duty in a little hamlet in the north, just on the borders of Icewind Dale. It's a very dangerous area. All right. All of a sudden, you see a gang of goblins in the context of this world go by you into the town. What do you think they're going to do based on the fact that you have been raised on the borders of Icewind Dale? You've got a fiance who is going to become wife and baby on the way. These goblins you know what goblins usually do in these sorts of situations.
There's no answer to that, but the one you're forcing me into with
Correct,
that is
yeah.
the
That's
context of this world.
No,
We're
because
trying
when
to
you
there you
change
go.
that. We're trying to smash that context and the glass ceiling and the patriarchy.
No, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can reframe it in a really interesting way where you let the players fucking fuck up these goblins, and it turns out they were just looking to go drinking in the pub.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
Except then
Thank
you
you,
break
Stax.
you
And then you
break
go-
the
and then
rest
you
of
go,
the
"Oh,
world
the
building.
Solution.
Wait, shit. What the hell happened here?
I mean,
And then
sure, in
you
a
branch on a whole
in a setting where goblins are socially accepted creatures that aren't going to ransack, sure. But in a setting where monsters are evil, and this
Okay,
is
well,
what
then you're
this is
presupposing
Harmony's
the fucking
point.
conversation.
You're making
That's
the
what world
world.
building is.
You could
No,
you
no, no,
could
but I
have
can presuppose a different world.
yeah, you
That's
could
what
have
you
it where you
can.
go and
Then
kill
I should
all the
You most
goblins
definitely
and then
can.
you deal with
Players.
consequences after.
You most
Why did you
definitely
think the goblins
can.
were just evil? What the fuck is your problem? And then they go, oh shit, wait, goblins could just drink and
The thing is, if
have a
you have
pub?
not
But they're
informed
also
your,
kind of
if
evil,
you've
and they
not
go,
informed,
fuck, wait, I don't know
if
which
you've
one
not,
is which.
if you've not informed your players of the way goblins are treated in the world you have built, you probably should have done that.
Hold on, no, that's a good. Stop, Staxioms, you shut the fuck up right now because I want to interrogate this. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is a good question. How would you, if being the DM of a tabletop game, how do you inform your players about the races in the world?
It's quite simple. You have a setting document, or you sit down and say, session 0, we're going to play. I play very traditional fantasy. It's very traditional fantasy, guys. You know what to expect. If there's something more, i.e., by the way, in this world, the orcs are actually highly honored saviors of the West because they came in through magic portals, a la World of Warcraft, and rather than attack everyone, they rode valiantly onto the field of battle and saved us all from something or other else. Then in that you would tell the players, by the way, orcs, if you see them around, good folks. Don't.
Fair enough.
Your characters would know at least a little bit about the world they inhabit.
To some extent, yes. However, fair enough. And that is the traditional way of going about it. I've played in plenty of games where I've done that. I've given a campaign document before to my players, which kind of explains the stereotypes of the world, right? What the character itself would believe had they come from these different cultures.
Original
and
D&D did this as well.
I understand, right? But there is another way, and I think equally interesting and in some ways more interesting. You inform your players about the world or by letting them experience the world. So the way they find out if orcs are evil or not is by interacting with them. And this also gives a chance for players to provide input into the world, to get skin in the game, because one of the things that I've done with other systems I've ran, like 13th Age, for example, is I let the players themselves, through their interactions, decide, are orcs inherently evil or can they be saved? I don't answer that as a DM. I present the question and I let the players answer that question. And I think that provides more player agency. It makes more interesting story. So it just makes for a funner game.
Any sort of background in that second scenario, any sort of background information.
How about this? Could I jump in? Here's what I would do. You can even have
because he's asking me. You can answer after, okay?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What I usually do is these are the commonly held beliefs of the world. Whether those beliefs are true or not is a different question.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Sorry.
But see, I don't really have an issue with that. But again, I'm going to drag us all the way back to that anti-colonialism document. And again, I'm going to point at it and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, that, as Richard has already said, is wrong because the worlds we play in aren't colonial.
Okay,
at
wait,
least
hold
not
on.
not in the sense that this author means, by which I'm pretty sure he means European colonization. If we're actually going to take, as Harmony said at the very beginning of this debate in her opening statement, what colonialism is in a broader sense, i.e. the movement of people, we could talk about every single instance where one group of people wins out over another group of people. We could talk about the, I forget which cultural group it was, thousands of years ago, that's traveled south of the Sahara, wiping out every other African indigenous people and basically becoming the one overarching genetic ancestry for most modern sub-Saharan Africans. We could talk about the way the Mongolians raped their way across most of, a large portion of the world, to the point where I think 1 in 5 people in Asia are descended from one in particular Mongolian. We can talk about what my country did to the Irish. We can talk about what the Irish did to my country. Where do you think
That's
they got
why
their
this isn't
patron
about
saint
just
from?
like some white guilt. This is about colonialism at large. It's not.
But it's
That's
not
why the
framing
document.
it
I think
that
you're
way.
false to assume it's about European colonialism. It was made by Europeans, sure, but it's like I think the broader theme is to think of the questions of what does civilized mean versus uncivilized. How much race and realism do we put on these characters? It's these broader topics. It's not like specific white people bad. Like I think that's something that's being not misread into it.
I
I mean,
also think
look,
I also knock
if
off
that
Brian
is the
David
case,
Gilbert. I'd like to go. Could I? Okay, so
thanks,
here's
man.
the no,
Appreciate
for
that.
sure. Here's the problem. Okay, we said, hey, look, it's medieval Europe. Okay, that's not even colonial time. I think that is a complete misunderstanding of what we mean when we say colonialism in the gaming. We are talking about Tolkien, who was a Brit in fucking 1940s. Yes, he was trying to mimic medieval Europe, but of course, his understanding of cultures at the time influenced the way he built a world. In some ways, really good. He's an incredible linguist. He made some really cool, rich and textured languages. In some ways, kind of bad. He kind of
And a
had some
better man than you will
anti-Semitic
ever be.
tropes. What?
No, you take that back.
I don't know enough about Tolkien. That's
I
what I've
would
heard, so-
recommend withdrawing that.
I
Okay.
would not withdraw that. I mean,
don't think- I think
goblins have
that's
been
pretty
seen
valid.
as a stand-in
Like
for Jewish
hook-nosed-
people for like, yeah, that's a known thing that's been happening in Europe and folklore for
And
like,
your
150
argument,
years.
your
That's-
argument that
I'm
orcs can't be
pretty sure
Mongolian
that's a-
because they're not riding horses is ludicrous.
Yeah,
like
it's absurd.
we have to understand that analogies aren't going to be one-to-one. Yeah, well, they're not from the country of Mongolia, so how could they be Mongolian? It's
There's
like,
nothing about them
there's
that's
clearly
Mongolian. He
influence
made a
from-
reference to ugly Mongolians. That's not racist.
you've got to be fucking serious.
Are there beautiful Mongolians?
I don't know that Tolkien thinks so. I'm not sure.
Are there beautiful Mongolians?
Yes, I think so.
You can't
Yeah, so
deny
do I.
that some of these fantasy
Are there ugly
characters have their
Mongolians?
roots in bad stuff. You can't deny that. Like in
I most
J.K. Rowling,
certainly
when you
can.
have, I'm not saying she's even intending to do it, but when you have like
Yes.
Jew-coded goblins that have big noses that are controlling the money, I mean,
A
that's
little bit.
undeniable. Like, and again, I don't even think she means it. It's just become a trope in fantasy.
Okay,
for so
I don't
long,
know
but
if
it
I'm
has its
equipped for a
stem and
Harry
systemic-
Potter debate, but
Can I just
Just giving a
submit?
really
fantasy
quick.
example.
Can I
Nope,
submit
nope, no,
another
you can't.
road?
No, you can't.
Oh.
Okay, we're gonna carry the conversation forward. I want to make sure that the more quiet people get a chance to talk. I want to give it to Harmony. I want to give it to Richard. Harmony, go ahead.
I don't even know where to begin. I just
Pick your
listened to
favorite
this.
point.
Right.
I can throw in. I can throw in if you want.
Yeah, please go.
And then
Yep.
Harmony.
I'm
after
like,
that.
You were talking about what you explain to new players, for example. And I would say there's actually some front loading to that. There's the zeitgeist, right? And the zeitgeist of, I've had plenty of, let's say, players, especially if they're newer players, they might see, let's play D&D. Is that like Lord of the Rings, right? So it's like, yeah. And to me, that's the beginning part. That's sort of the foundation where it's like, okay, I guess most of us understand, or you're interested in this game because you've had experience with something in fantasy before. So I could say, yeah, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, but the elves are a little different here. It's got a little bit of this. It's got a little bit of that. And they have settings and things like that. But it's a cool game because at our table, it can be whatever we want. Like, that's the coolest part of the game. So it says an ogre has 90 hit points. I can give it 300, right? It says demons are evil. I can make a redeemed demon, right? So it gives me these baselines, but I'm allowed to play with them. And so that to me is this, I'm sort of in between these two debates, I think, because like I said, I think putting something in as baseline isn't saying I love this thing or this is the way it should be. It's just setting out a baseline, and the game itself, when it gets to you, lets you play things. I think if something was really, really harmful, like made a group of people feel terrible, I'd want to take it out. But There's, like I said, it sort of goes if you bought a gangster game and you don't think there's going to be murder and extortion, that can be a. I'm
Actually,
not.
Richard, could I ask
Yeah.
you a question about that? I was meaning to ask you this earlier. So I
Yep.
totally get it. Like I'll play different games and maybe you're playing GTA and yeah, you're killing people and you're stealing money. But if I
Yep.
was playing a D&D session and like someone went to go essay a elf maiden, I would not be okay with that. I would feel like that's a bridge too far. So there's some actions that I would accept that are just in this setting, and there are some actions that I'd be like, that is going to have a negative effect, I think, on our psyche to be role playing certain types of gross actions. And so,
Yeah.
do you see
I,
a similar line there?
well, I don't think like in your example, I don't think you can find a D&D book with essay in it.
But if
No,
someone
it's
Um,
just
started, if someone
as
just
a
added
player.
it in, yeah, someone's like, you know what,
Yeah.
I see the elf maiden and I'm gonna roll for initiative. I'd be like, bro, like that's, and I think
Yes.
that would be
Yes.
unethical
Yep.
to play that
And
way. So I think that's
and
proof that it has a real world.
I could be playing a game of chess and somebody could pull their pants down in front of me. Like,
Right, but that wouldn't be a
is
part of
But we would,
chess.
but we would.
This could
yeah.
be a part
That's
of
what
D&D.
Could
yeah, but I'm
Let
bringing it
him
into
answer.
chess. If
Yeah.
I'm bringing it into chess if
Right,
I
but
do
chess
that.
has a closed set of rules. D&D is a role playing
Whoa,
game where
whoa,
you can choose
whoa.
to do what you want, right?
I
But there's
Yeah,
certain
but there's
actions we would
yeah,
say
but
are
there's
harmful.
there's
Richard,
written
can I respond?
rules.
No,
There's
let
written
Richard
rules, and I
respond.
think there's basic unwritten rules. In chess, the rules are you move around the board. The kind of accepted unwritten rules are I don't pull my pants down
Right.
in front of you in the wrist. So then you get into the thing, do I have to, as a game designer, write down all of the unwritten rules?
No,
And
but I
to me,
guess
that's not
No, let him
point was
finish
just
answering.
saying that I think life
Yeah.
Hold on.
does.
Let him finish answering Confluence before we get there. Richard, finish your thought. So unwritten rules,
yeah,
you don't have
that
to
was
write
my
them all down. Yeah.
yes, and that was the end of my point. Actually, it's like
Oh, fair enough.
if you try to catch all those, if it would just be a book of the unwritten rules. It's the book of how to deal with people around you,
I'm not saying
and that gets tough. And
I'm
that would
not saying
probably and all of that is not game content. It's
right. I'm
not.
not
But
saying you should have a rule book saying these things are allowed. My only point is that we can't just say it's just a game. There are certain things that I think most players would realize this is having an unhealthy effect on either my own psyche or possibly could be offending the people I'm playing with, or just an unhealthy thing to role play. So I just want to make that clear that I think there is a connection, even though it's in a role playing game, there is still a connection to virtue ethics and how it's going to affect us on a mental and I think an ethical level.
Okay.
And it
I
sounds like
wanna-
you agree
Yep.
because
Yeah.
you wouldn't do those things.
Absolutely, and I would just say, like I said, I'm sorry to kind of break over here.
You're fine.
Like I said, from a game developer standpoint, I don't think a lot of game developers want to insult a large portion of the audience. But you also have to think of when somebody's making something, it could be anywhere from a year to 5 years, say, to make a game, like a tabletop or digital game. So, and this is way out there, sort of conjecture, but I'm just trying to get it across. You're working on a game that is about one player gets to try to protect a president, the other player gets to try to assassinate a president. You work on it for 5 years, and right before you're going to release it, JFK gets shot. Right? As a developer, you're like, ugh, this is in bad taste. Right? Like, shit, this is 5 years of work. We didn't think this would happen. So I absolutely agree. But I think at base, the acceptance that no developer of a game wants to hurt people, and when we get into these vague areas, it gets very split. And if the assumption is they meant to hurt someone, I think that would be false.
I want to give
I,
it to.
I think it would be we didn't mean to do that.
I got you. I want to give it to Harmony. She's been trying to get in. She's raising her hand and stuff. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, you took me a little bit kind of aback by the essay reference. I just want to say I have never played at any table ever, and I've been playing this game for a long time. I played at a lot of different tables. I have never once played at a single table where anybody ever thought that that sort of thing would be acceptable.
Oh, I did.
Um,
I have.
I'm very sorry to hear that. Like, that sounds like a horrible experience, and I hope you play with better people.
I play at a treatment center with fucking kids who are like, yeah,
I see.
crazy.
But why would that be
dysfunctional.
unacceptable, Harmony? I agree it is, but why is it? It's because it could offend people at the table and it could have a negative effect on your psyche, right? and that could
Uh,
apply to other areas.
pardon my language, because it's fucking weird.
Right.
Um, nobody's gonna do that. I
mean,
don't
look,
understand what it has
So,
to
but
do
you're
with
saying,
gaming.
so even though it's,
I
so
want to
I'm just
point
saying,
out
just the
in order
game
to make
thing
your
doesn't
in order
hold.
to make your point, we've gone straight to the seediest thing that we can. I think we can probably safely assume that apart from Staxioms' unfortunate experience,
Well, we
this
don't.
doesn't
Here,
tend to happen.
let's use a more a
Could I-
less fraught example. Someone wants to play a victim of child predation, and they say
That was my
that's
last character.
my backstory, right?
That was
Someone
my last
else
character.
in the group is like, I don't want to deal with that in game. I'm here to have fun and roll dice. I don't want to explore like that deep, like seated childhood trauma stuff. Don't you think that to Confluence's point, don't you think that could have a negative effect on people's experience in the game?
So
Harmony
No,
and then
go on,
Jack.
Harmony. I've spoken enough.
sure,
You go.
sure. So I'm just gonna say, generally in my game, I don't really deal with backstories too much. I kind of make them really short. And if somebody gives me a story that says like, oh, they were a victim of horrible things as a child, that we probably can't talk about on YouTube, that's probably not gonna come up during the game. That's just probably not gonna be in there.
Could I?
You're
It was
I'm gonna put
Jack's.
myself-
I want to hear. Jack
Right.
said it was mine, but go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I wrote a character very heavily based on Artemis Entreri, who is one of my favorite characters in all of fiction. Very
Oh,
grey.
yeah.
I think you guys would quite like him. And without wanting to spoil too much, my character, who has now been retired, he has gone off to live happily ever after with his wife after murdering his best friend. He was a human fighter. He grew up in a rough part of the city where his mother sold herself to feed him, and his stepfather abused him. This character, it never came up in the roleplay, that part of the past, but he was played as a very dark, brooding, closed-off man who was very willing to just kill straight away, no questions asked, to solve his problems, especially if he thought there was someone else abusing a child or if there was a pimp. Those two classes of people would not wake up in the morning if he found out about them, because I would make sure that he would go out, sneak in, murder the hell out of them. Fighter, by the way, just very good at stealth.
And that sounds like
He-
a great.
Okay,
Oh,
could I-
sorry.
Over a long while, this character I think I played for about a year and a half, nearly 2 years. This character went on adventures, made friends, started opening up, and in doing so, he had to end the life of one of the paladins that had actually brought him out of his shell, because that paladin became an oathbreaker. That was a great bloody story. Not once did the child abuse that my character went through have to come up, but it did make it an incredible arc, and he's one of my favorite that I've played yet.
Certainly,
I've got
but
a
if it
point
didn't
to
come out,
throw in, but I can wait my turn if you want.
yeah, just real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, if it didn't come out at the table, then I mean, fair. But
It was-
I understand
I've
it
got
was like a
reads it.
tertiary effect. It was helpful for
Yeah.
you. I get
Indeed.
that.
I've got a ton of stories. of-
Staxioms. Go ahead, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to say. Well, I had a character like this. I had a character like this. I mean, I get it. We get it. Fair enough.
No, for sure.
But go ahead, Staxiom. I want to talk about this more broadly. Is what I mean.
No, for sure. I think that there's definitely a place where we talk about these kind of things in the story. I'll use an example. I work at a treatment center with a bunch of kids who are fucking troublemakers for sure. We were playing a D&D story. It was Fandalver, Minds at Fandalver. Anyway, there's like a shapeshifter in it. This is boring. But the shapeshifter turned into one of the fucking dwarves or whatever. And then like they couldn't figure out which one was which. There's like this like little sub story that we had for like half of a session where they had to figure out who it was. So they went, let's fucking torture one of them and just figure out what it was. I think a DM who was kind of inexperienced to handle this, or was like, hey, I'm at a treatment center, I don't want to do this, would just say no. I said, yes, I'll let you do this, but here's what's going to happen. And I didn't tell them this, but I kind of like let them do this. I let them torture one of the dwarves. They accidentally picked the wrong one. And the dwarf basically like lied. He was like, oh yeah, I know where this is. I'm a liar. I'm sorry. I'm not the person. And then he picks a place in the woods, and then they go to the place, and then the dwarf escapes, right? He like runs off. He's like, oh yeah, it's right over here. And then he just fucking runs. What I'm basically teaching the kids is, hey, first off, torture isn't even like good utilitarian wise. Like people will lie to get out of torture. Second off, like basically they are currently lost in the woods. They've lost an ally. They're now friends with the enemy because they trust the enemy because their ally just fucked off. And basically, I am navigating a moral story right here to fuel, or sorry, I'm navigating a moral lesson to fuel the story, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
it's
I'm a
integrated
dungeon
into the
master,
story.
not a teacher.
Do you not feel like that's maybe
I mean, hey,
interesting?
in the context of your job, cool. But I'm a
No,
a
but I would do
dungeon
that at
master.
a normal.
I'm
I would
not.
do that at a normal
I'm
table.
not a therapist. You're not my therapist. I am
But
not.
I would
here
love to be in
to-
Stax's
But-
game. That sounds great. I want
Like,
those
No, I'm
moral
good.
nuance
There's a
and
little
bit-
background
there's
in
a
the
little bit-
story.
You can
That's how
have
I
that,
wanna
but look,
play, at least.
I
It's a
think
little bit
again
like,
we're,
oh, yeah,
we're sort of
torture-
tacking on jobs to the job of dungeon master. Man, I'm just here to roll some dice and tell a good story.
That's it.
Well,
You
then
have
why-
no like.
Yes.
Why are you
There's-
getting
Mate, I do this
offended
for I
by
do this
sexual-
for fun. If I wanted to work, I'd go to the office.
Are you? That's work to like engage with a story with like artistic
No,
purpose.
did
and,
you
like,
not
get
listen to
dial-
anything I just said?
It
But
sounds
yeah, hold on,
like
hold
that's
on,
what
hold
you
on.
said.
You're
Yeah,
all
it
you're
does
all
sound like
talking
you're
at
saying
once,
it's
and they
work.
all can hear it. Tyler, you haven't gone for a
Yeah.
minute. Go.
Jack, I just want to. I'm interrogating Jack's standards here. You have
Yeah,
the
good.
standard that the sexual assault joke was too much, but you're saying at the same time you're not somebody's therapist. We're all just here to have fun.
Okay, can I correct you on that first bit? I didn't say it was too much. I said I'd never experienced it.
Oh, I thought you were morally against it.
I
No, that
mean,
was me.
I wouldn't play
Jack came
with
out
someone
pretty
who
pro SA, if I remember correctly. That's not
I would
like-
Okay, we
rather
don't
you
need to
be
do
very
that.
well
Come on,
as well.
guys.
I'm
Come
just
on, come
saying-
on,
Thank
come on.
you.
Let's be
You
a
have a
little. Let's be
negative
a little good faith here.
You
Okay.
have a negative standard
joking.
against up here.
Terrible
He's
joke.
trying to enforce a positive standard, kind of along the same lines. And I feel like this argument that we're making, we're kind of getting away from the main point here a little bit. In that this colonialism thing is a push to remove a way of stereotyping certain demographics to be a certain way of evil. It's a habit that people do of tribalism, building that up, and it's trying to remove
Do
that.
you see the
from
flip
psyche.
side to what you've said there, though? The flip side to that is if you think it's dumb, then obviously you're a racist. You see the flip side.
I don't
Like
think
this
anyone's saying-
entire
am.
paragraph, the entire
Okay.
paragraph. Thank you for being honest. But the entire paragraph is this. It frames what it thinks colonialism is, and then it says if you do not take up the responsibility to dismantle this, then you are to be othered, and you are some way.
I don't know what
less.
article you read, but it's not
No,
the one
for
that I
real.
read at all.
Yeah,
Like I don't
it
know
was-
how much subtext you're reading into it, but it's an insane amount.
I didn't
Like
see
there's so
anything
much
in
there.
projection.
Hold on,
It's
Harmony.
a very
Hold on.
moralizing pulpit.
Harmony.
Yeah,
go
it was
ahead.
a 4-page section in a book with how many pages? Let me see the page count of the book because
Okay,
that
while
was
she's
like a
looking for the
significant
page count,
portion.
let me read a couple of
it-
these super chats so I can make
yeah.
a little money. Speaking of page count, gang, if you're enjoying this content, like the stream, give me more money, send me super chats, gift subs on Twitch, and I see you on Twitch too. Love the gift subs, and thank you for those. Really appreciate you. Let's just go through these. $5 from Dwight Baldwin. If you're up against an antagonist, you don't always need to know their backstory or nuances. Thank you for the $5. $2 from Zephyr Hash. Nerd fight, nerd fight, nerd fight, nerd fight. $5 from Dwight Baldwin. How about killing living things with weapons? Does this make us more prone to violence? So should we stop playing altogether? Question mark. Thank you for $5. $5 from Rabid Wombat. You know they're men's rights goblins because they're attacking a village as evil, and all men's rights activists are evil, right? Thank you for $5. And then $2 more from Zephyr Hash. Nerd fight, nerd fight, nerd fight, nerd fight. Thank you. Okay. Harmony, please.
Yeah, so it was a 4-page section. It was actually quite long out of a 125-page book, and it was extremely preachy. I mean, to me, it just wasn't the place for it. I forgot what the question was because you were reading super chats, and it totally just left my mind.
Can I
So
respond? Can I
No,
respond?
no,
And
no.
This is also to Richard.
Hold on. No. Let's keep it with Harmony, right? Like, we're talking about or Jack here was saying that the implication of the anti-colonial section was that if you play it in the traditional way, the colonial way, quote unquote, you are a colonizer. You are a bad. You are that.
I'm not sure if it said that. I don't believe it said that outright. However, I do think that the implication was.
You think that
somewhat there,
that's the
yes.
implication, and it's there if saying okay.
I mean,
Fair
when
enough.
it comes to saying like embracing anti-colonial play, This is a better way to refer to goblins. I do believe it's saying goblins are sacking a village, or gnolls are attacking is generally bad. Now, I do not believe that Flourish has or would come out and call grognards colonialists or white
But you
supremacists or
are saying
whatever.
he's
I don't think.
implying it in this?
No. I think he is implying that the behavior is bad, not necessarily the people. I'm going to be charitable to him because I don't know this person at all.
What's
And
the
I think
D&D equivalent to white fragility? Would it be human fragility?
um,
This is super funny. So I have a question, because I think Richard and Harmony, and I think maybe Jack as well, have said sort of something similar to this, that this isn't the place for it. And I guess my question is, I'll make a statement. I think that we're a little bit too ingrained in D&D as the RPG, okay? Because D&D is kind of known as the fluid, you can, like, it's kind of mechanics based, and you can kind of make whatever you want out of the story. But I played other RPGs that are like, no, here is the story, and here's the story we're trying to tell, and here's the best way to facilitate it. And if you want to get that type of story, this is the way to do so. And it's kind of like structured to push you in that way. And if someone's building a game where it's like, hey, I want to build the type of game that has nuanced characters, that has characters that are not good or evil, but they're kind of like, they're grayer, and they have like backstory, there's a reason why they do it. Here is a game that you can play where we're going to facilitate that type of conversation. And I don't understand why a guide to that book is the wrong place for that.
It is. Can I throw down to that?
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I'm also talking about the types of products. So this was a mechanical book. And I think some people on the panel have mentioned this before. If I said, I think anti-colonial play or no colonial play, whatever you want, any other thing you want, I think that would be really fun for a setting. Then to me, this is a bad place for it. Instead, you could make a setting book that's really fun, that uses those things that you're talking about. And like Harmony said, that would probably be less preachy feeling, because it would actually just be an integrated setting. But this is sort of, in a mechanical book, I'm going to go into this nuance. So that's what I mean by it's kind of the wrong place. Also, we should think about some of the stuff we're talking about here too. Because like I said, I'm coming from like a game designer, game developer perspective. And some of the stuff we're drifting into is, what would I allow at my table? And that's that's the decision of the players. But this particular thing is sort of like, what would you put in a product where maybe is the right place to deal with that properly? So that's what I'm getting at.
Maybe I got the wrong paper. I didn't see, like, again, I'm going to go into Robin DiAngelo's white fragility here. I didn't see any insults, attacks. I didn't see any commands in here. I saw a suggestion that insinuated going with the old way is bad. And if it comes off as preachy or whatever form of
Call it a
tone policing,
microaggression.
yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what it seems like to me.
Got to
like
use the language of the kids these days.
I guess a question I would have, and this is for Harmony and for Jack specifically. How responsible is someone creating a supplement, or even WotC, right, when creating a core rule book or a setting? How responsible are they for you feeling like they're calling you racist? Like, how responsible are they that you read their work and you felt a certain way and you got upset? Why are they responsible for your feelings?
It's such a good question.
Do they want my money?
So
I mean, fair.
they can put whatever they want in their book.
Sure,
I have no problem with Flourish putting that in his book, even though I actually was told this was one of the other authors on it, but I don't remember the name. But I mean, his name is on the front of it. I have no problem with him putting that in his book. He can do whatever he wants. However, if he wants my money, I'm not buying it. That's all I'm saying.
I think we
like-
identify as non-binary on this issue.
Exactly.
Well,
Oh
I would
my
say
god,
it
that
as a-
joke was so bad. Anyway, go ahead.
As a game developer again, when I look at Flourish's previous products, which I think is Lazy DM's Guide and stuff like that, I think he had a very broad audience, right? And and it was sort of focused on that stuff. How do you be a good DM? And I'm like, cool. It's mechanical. It's about DMing. Like that's a good focus. And I kind of feel bad about this mess. I wish I could take his name off it, but still discuss it. But it's, I think if he had a broad audience, this makes some of the audience feel bad, whether they're righteous to do that or not.
Sure.
It will.
But
So
there
he's
is
probably shrunk his
yeah.
he's probably shrunk his audience. So as a game developer, I would say that's not great. How would I look out for that in the future?
I think a lot of this though isn't just people. I think a lot of this is astroturf might be the wrong word here. A lot of this is artificial because people will say this is what it says, but this is what it means, and you should be offended. So it's fine if you were reading it and you feel a certain way. But what I have a problem with from that side, and don't get me wrong, I think it's retarded. I think the whole I'll just play my cards here. The whole thing is retarded. It's retarded. I read it. My eyes glazed over. I was like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever read in a long, long time. And I tossed it aside. But what bothers me is when people go out
We win,
and say, oh, we all win.
What?
Especially me for the $20 from JMac. We'll get to your super chat in a minute. But let me get this out. It's not just that. There's a lot of people telling you and telling me and trying to say this is offensive by nature, and I don't buy that. I don't buy the argument that this is offensive by nature. I think that people are offended, fair, but it is not offensive to write. I think it's just bad. It's not. Do you understand the difference? Am I communicating correctly? Is this clear?
That's exactly why I've been careful about the direction I'm coming from, because like I said, I come from the angle of a creator. I never want to see a creator torched, right? But if I was to take this particular snippet, the sidebar and some of the other stuff in there, I would say that was not a great design decision. And especially even taking that people have been very reactionary about a lot of different things in recent years. I'd say the past decade. That it's like, and to me, this all just kind of sucks. And I do wish we could dial it down and not destroy people. And I really hope that Sly Flourish can make something else after this and it does well.
You see, I agree with you, Richard. Because I spent a long time in an essay recently for Tales from the Tavern issue 2 by the Elven Maiden.
Different essay. Sorry, I'm in the politics realm. I was like, oh, what?
And like the actual
I
use
heard
of the
it too.
word while
Yeah,
you
gotcha.
guys
Jack is I told you guys.
while you guys are busy like redefining words, I'm just going to use the old, the English. Thank you. A written wording, long thing, ESSAY.
You're new to acronyms, is that what's going on?
No, it's an essay. It's different.
I wrote a lot about purging the poison of politics from the fantasy genre purely because this is what happens. Creators get dragged, and I think that I actually had a conversation with that FNGM a while ago. He doesn't particularly like me anymore, and I don't really blame him. But he said that the reason these sorts of things get included is because for the last 10 years, the American left, and I stress American left because this isn't really a thing here, gets upset if someone doesn't pay homage to them, whereas the American right had like a tolerance level for it. I think what's happened now is that's flipped. We now have the American right just...
Was it bad when the American left did that?
About it. I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad. I'm saying the fact of the matter...
I will. It was bad. It was dumb.
Okay.
So when the right does it, it's probably also...
You see, again, if you go to my website...
Okay, go.
Let me say one more thing, Staxioms, and I think this might endear me to you a little bit more, and you might get a little less red in the face.
I'm already endeared.
I wrote on my website, lostlawlibrary.com, that now that the pendulum is most definitely swinging, and I think everyone here would agree the pendulum is definitely on its way back around as the nature of things go, we need to be very careful that we do not allow it to smack us in the back of the head as it flies by. We want to sort of keep it at a nice center ground so that the majority of people can enjoy what is produced. And I think the best way of doing that is just to say, you know what? We're not politicians. We're not social engineers. We're just here to write a good story and roll some dice.
Okay. I really want to respond to that because
Go
I'm
ahead.
really glad you brought it back because this is something that I actually tried to pivot the conversation back to this. Creating games apolitically. I really want to talk about this. Harmony, do you agree with this? Do you think that games should be apolitical?
For the most part, yes.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
don't
yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah,
There's
yeah. Sorry,
nuance,
sorry,
but
sorry.
yes.
No, for sure, for sure. I'll throw this out there. I don't know what the fuck that means. I don't know what it means for a game to be apolitical.
Of
I
course you don't.
think
You're a leftist. You think everything's political.
no. But like, no, for a little bit. And I'm not a leftist. Don't fucking disparage me like that. If citizens are getting killed by bandits, and you talk to them, and they're like, "Whoa, what the fuck is going on?" And they're like, "Fuck the king. He let this happen. We got to revolt." Is that political? We're cooing. We're talking about
Okay,
unstabling
what you're
the
doing
current
there
power
is
structure.
you're conflating the world building and the systems of power within that world with inserting political ideologies of the author.
What
No,
do
what
you
I
hold
am
on?
trying
Just
to
for
say-
my edification, what do you mean by political? Maybe we start there, Jack, because you're
Me?
apolitical.
can-
Apolitical. Okay, or
I can
Harmony.
answer that.
Someone tell me
Yeah.
what you
Go,
mean.
go,
Yeah.
go for it, Harmony.
Yeah. I think that games, if I can read your supplement and I don't know the political affiliation of the author when I finish, then I think it's succeeded.
A plus job,
Um,
actually. Yeah.
I don't want suggested. No, seriously, I don't want suggestive pronouns. I don't want obvious metaphors for Trump supporters,
The
or
evil
I don't want
orange
obvious
bandit
metaphors
leader
for
has taken
communists.
power right now.
I don't want that. If it's subtle, whatever. But
No,
I
that's-
don't want the obvious stuff.
That's
Staxium's gonna have a
ham-fisted
fit if
and
you don't let
bad
him
writing.
talk.
Let her finish. Let her finish. Let her finish.
Wait.
Yeah.
And I also don't want I don't want like trolls going around with purple hair or anything as a caricature of leftists. I don't want that either. If I don't know what the author's political stance is by the time I'm done reading, then they've done a great job.
I think we do have to draw that valuable distinction again, though, as well, where a lot of people are reacting right now to contemporary politics. So if I was to say the Thieves Guild doesn't like the Merchants Guild, that's politics, or the Duragar that live the Deep Dwarves are communist, that's politics. But if I make the town of or the King Trumponia and he's building a wall around the town, then that's even that's like
That's
that's
an
pretty
eye roll.
thinly veiled like right now. And if someone's going to the game for escapism from that for a little bit, I can see how a lot of people would be turned off by that. So, and I know I don't think you need that for good storytelling.
Does anyone
So
disagree? Hold on, just real
the
quick.
debate of like I need to talk about a debate that's happening between Joe Biden and Trump to write a good story. I don't think that's true.
Well, does
for
anyone
example.
disagree with that? I don't think anyone here, and correct me if I'm wrong, does anyone disagree that if you were reading a book and suddenly the orange Trumponia is building the wall, you're like, okay, this is dumb. I don't think anyone here would think that's okay.
It
It's the same.
depends on the
It's the
context.
Rings of Power, dude, isn't it? Like if you look at the Rings of Power, you got the Numenorian guy saying the elves are taking our gerbs.
Yeah, that's ham-fisted bad writing. There's an example I wanted to use. I had it written down of Peacemaker on HBO. If you watch that, James Gunn packs that shit full of leftist themes. There's a fat black woman who plays a secret super agent, like is running and sprinting without sweating and shooting people in the head with doing all sorts of acrobatics and shit. It's just all this like subtle woke things plugged in there, and it's entertaining as hell. It's a great show. I enjoyed every minute of it. If the writing's good, if the show's entertaining, you can pack whatever the hell you want. Look at the history of the X-Men. Professor Xavier and what's his name, Magneto, are based off of 2 Israeli prime ministers. It's like it's based in like completely seeped in politics. Star Wars, massive themes to World War II. Politics is seeped into some of the best stories we have. And someone brought up Doom earlier as a good version of like good versus evil. The story for Doom is almost non-existent. The character's name is Doom Guy. That's how little characterization they did with that character. He doesn't even speak. Like, the Bible is the only good versus evil story with enough canon to make the story like good. But
well, then I would say you're talking a little bit different bent, which would be the craft. So the X-Men and Professor Xavier and Magneto and stuff like that. There was some really good, well-crafted storytelling in there. But just from the reaction of people to say what we're talking about right now, I would say it wasn't. It certainly wasn't handled with the skill that those people handled it. So if you do take on those things, know that you've raised the bar and that you better do a good job of it. Because it could turn your audience against themselves. And to me, that sucks because that's where we get to everyone wants to play games, but we're fighting amongst ourselves. And I hate that.
Amen.
Go ahead,
See,
Confluence, please.
I want to make an appeal to the group because I agree. I think we
And
can
keep
all
in mind we
agree
got about
that-
20 minutes left, so
Okay,
just
the
FYI.
document is cringy and it's ham-fisted and it's poorly written, but we're all adults, and I'm asking if we can separate the wheat from the chaff. The aspects where it's inviting us to tell more deep, nuanced stories, I think that's something that we can take away from that. I agree the presentation, pretty awful. A lot of the wording didn't need to happen, but I think you could write a similar document that didn't have the kind of wokeification in it. And I think if we look past that, I think this is a document that you could use to build deeper worlds. Jack,
No.
you're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head? What, do you disagree with that?
He did for
Not
sure. He
one
solid
inch.
disagreed this whole
Stay
time.
out of my games.
Okay. Can I here's the problem. I disagree that we care about wokeness. We care about ham-fisted storytelling. We've said this over and over again. I get it. Because I read fucking Narnia as a kid and I was like, this is awesome. I reread it as an adult. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's like, oh, and there's this lion and his best friend, he turned against him for material goods. And then he laid on a stone altar and he died for 3 days. And then when he woke up, he breathed life into all of the previous. It's like, I get you like Jesus. Okay. I get that Aslan is Jesus. Like he really hits you over the head with it. And I think that his way better stories are when they're a little bit more integrated later in the series. Like, I agree with you guys that sometimes ham-fisted is fucking frustrating. But I also think that I can still read a Lewis book and recognize he's Christian because that's his moral system and it guides the way that he builds his stories. Of course it does. That's just the way that human beings work. So like when I build a story, I think people can be like, oh, I bet he's got a left-leaning tint, but I don't clearly say, oh, here are the good guys and here are the bad guys, and this is the immigrants. It's like the way that I tell a story is crafted based off of how I think the world works. So when I will build a world, it's going to feel realistic to what I think the world works, and the way that I think the world works is political. So
Except
yeah,
we're not trying to represent your
Staxiom.
world. We're trying to represent someone else's world. But sorry, Harmony.
Yeah.
what?
Yes, sir.
Harmony,
No,
Harmony,
I'm
just give it.
what I'm saying. I'm DMing.
Well, Harmony, you have a question for Staxioms. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Or a
I
comment.
do.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier, and I actually meant to ask you this earlier
Uh-huh.
about villains in I can't remember what example you used, but about villains with motivations that where they truly believed that they were correct and they were right, and you thought that that made for more interesting stories.
Yeah.
Do you believe that just because someone is doing something horrible and evil, if they believe that they are correct in doing so, do you believe that that makes the act less evil?
Less evil, maybe. I don't know. I would say it's still obviously bad.
Can you give us an
Because
example?
I would say
Please?
just to. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Harmony,
Well,
just give us an example so we can
um,
bite on it a little bit.
yeah, sure. The example that comes to mind, nobody's gonna get. All right.
Try us. Don't
think-
fail
could I-
us in
Okay, so
advance. Give us the example.
there's a TV show I really like. This is always the example that comes to mind for this. The bad guys are the environmentalists. They want to wipe out 90% of the world to help the environment because that is their ideal. They believe that the world will not last beyond very much longer if they don't wipe out 90% of the world. The TV show is Utopia, by the way. It's on Channel 4. It's Britain's Channel 4. It's really, really good.
It is a really
But
good show,
anyway,
yeah.
oh, you know that one? Nice.
Of course, it's
Um,
classic. But go ahead.
Oh, wonderful. But anyway, they believe that they are doing right. However, what they are doing is they're going to kill 90% of humanity. That is evil. That is a horrible, evil thing to do. Would you say that someone like that is an example? I do think that that's an existential evil, even though the people involved truly believe that they are doing
Sure.
good.
I don't think you're gonna catch me say that eco-terrorists are good.
Right. I'm not
just
trying
think
to
that
get you in a gotcha.
they're more understanding and make for a better story. That's it. I think they're still bad, and as players, you have to fight against them. But I think that you're like, oh shit, let me really think
Okay.
about what the hell is going on here, rather than just pure like I'm a pretty
If I may,
red-pilled
So-
yeah,
utilitarian.
just really quick, if
So-
I may add to that, Harmony, by having a potentially somewhat sympathetic villain, it gives the players an actual additional choice to maybe side with them, which might make for an interesting story in and of itself. Whereas, I mean, you could side with the orcs, I guess, if you're
Certainly.
evil, but right?
And I have never argued here that evil can't have a motivation or evil cannot believe they are doing good. But I think that evil is an objective thing. I do not believe that evil is subjective in pretty much all cases. I am a bit of a black and white moralist, if we're being totally honest here. But I mean, when it comes to like wiping out large swaths of humanity, no, I'm not asking you to sympathize with eco-terrorists. I'm just saying that they can have good motivations. Like they can think that they are doing good, but still be existentially evil.
Sure.
I've been using that word a lot. I apologize.
That
for
ma-
that,
that
but,
makes the show.
mhm.
It sounds like that makes that show more meaningful. In
Sure.
the case of
we
Utopia.
are-
So
we
And
are
I think goblins have
conflating-
Holy shit, we
motivations
got
too. They're still
Harmony on
evil.
our side.
No,
Yes,
no, you don't. You're
you're-
misunderstanding.
You're
think-
conflating.
Oh,
You're
okay.
conflating.
Let Harmony elaborate. Let's let Harmony speak for
yeah.
Harmony. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're misunderstanding here because I think that goblins and gnolls, sure, they have motivations too. Gnolls believe that they are motivated by good because their good is eat. I am hungry. I eat humans. That is good. Food in belly. You know why? Because they have a very low intelligence. That's why. And so, I mean, yeah, they
That's-
have motivations. Goblins
That's-
have motivations. They might be running from a bigger evil. Who knows? Who cares when they're sacking a village, really?
But who decides this? This is a created game, so someone is
Sure.
deciding that
Yeah.
goblins
Yeah.
are
So
evil
the history of
characteristics.
gnolls, they came from Gary Gygax, who originally
No,
made
but
them
I can
as
just
troll
say, I
No,
don't
gnome
wanna do
hybrids.
that.
history. Yeah, you can just
Let
Yeah,
her
sure.
talk,
I didn't say you
gentlemen. You're all
couldn't.
about women's rights. Let
I
her
didn't
talk.
say you couldn't. You
Right,
can
well, I-
totally do it in the way you want in your world. You can make gnolls happy, friendly, whatever. You can make them have complex moral conundrums. I never said you couldn't. In fact, I'm just saying that you can have an evil creature that believes they're doing good, but they're still evil. That still falls under the umbrella of what I'm talking about
No,
when
it-
I say that I make them evil.
Well, then all you're saying, then I don't understand your problem with the core document, because the core document is essentially just saying, hey, flesh out your characters a little bit and have
No,
their
the core
evil
document
mean
is saying
something.
that players must, and I quote, must address colonialism.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
and
core
Show me-
document
wait,
is
hold on,
actually
let-
saying, yeah.
let me-
Yeah, you're
well,
kind of
third
downplaying
paragraph.
Staxioms.
let me throw in just a little thing here to chew on while we're doing this. So I try to get it back to the sort of main topic.
They're all
In
connected.
terms of
It's
this
really
thing,
hard. Yeah.
what's that?
I said it's a Gordian knot of threads. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to
Yeah,
go over.
there's
the
a
place
bit of
little
a okay. So there's an axiom in entertainment that's sort of like show don't tell,
Mhm.
right? And I've heard like Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe or the X-Men mentioned, and I would say they showed you what they were talking about. They didn't do like an upfront, here's my thing, you know, they didn't do a sidebar like this. And if I could go back in time and say, hey Sly, do you want to still say what you want to say, but like put it in a format where you can have more nuance, I would tell them to make a setting that's non-colonial, show people that it's fun, because show me the thing. Don't tell me it'll be fun. Show me the thing, right? If it's super fun, make the setting, right? And I think that's part of what we're getting at.
Don't, Jack,
you-
don't nod like you agree.
There's you're saying that you're
Am I supposed to listen to you on what I should agree with and what I
No,
shouldn't?
because what I'm trying to say is I've built settings and then I gave an example and you're like, fuck that, I would never want to sit on your tables.
That's
It's like,
that's the
That
point I'm
sounds
trying
exactly
to make.
like
is,
Jack. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he
That's the
said.
point I'm
yeah.
trying to
is
make
that not
here.
exactly
Is
what he
like
said?
Thanks,
That's a
Harmony.
good
No.
paraphrase.
I think
mean,
that's
yeah,
kind
No.
of
I'm a
what he
bastard.
was
Are we
saying.
speaking
That's
different
ridiculous.
languages? Okay, well, you know what? Language I'm going to speak money, so I'm going to read some of these super chats real quick while we all connect here. I do know that Jack, he's European, unfortunately, right? Like, we won't hold that against him.
Don't
right?
use the E word, man. Well, unless it's the English word, you can use that.
You
I'm
think
not European.
British is better?
Regardless, let me read
It's
some
better
super
than
chats.
being a native
Then we're
American
gonna
boy like you.
we can have. Oh, I would love to have you guys one-on-one sometime, right? That would be fun. But for now, we're going to read these super chats, and then we're gonna kind of. I have one last question for the group, and then we're gonna get to closings because I want to respect everyone's time, right? So let me get through these, and then we will continue. Ultra American TTRPGer says for $2, you can't be racist against fictional people. That's a skill issue. Watch me. I can. Maybe you can't, but I can. I'll show you how later. Okay, $20 for J-Back. I can't take anyone serious who tries to decry Tolkien as doing any sort of damage to storytelling or exhibiting any racism. You have to be so ideologically dispossessed or just woefully uninformed to think that. Thank you.
Or
for
like
the
wokefully
$20.
uninformed.
Okay, yeah. You guys stick to the takes. Your jokes are worse. Okay, $5 from Stug. How responsible is a DM for the offense taken by someone who thinks that gnolls are an insult directed at them? Question mark. Not. They're not responsible in my opinion, but I don't know.
I think that there's a reasonable Oh, sorry. Do we?
Well,
wanna
no. If you
engage with the-
look, if I come in and I'm like, gnolls, they all speak with British accents and they all wear glasses and they all have
fucking
kind of
based.
facial hair. Like if they all look exactly like Jack,
look like
then
fucking
okay,
David
fair enough.
Gilbert.
It might be a little on me that I'm offending him,
Yeah,
right?
I
But
think it's a reasonable person
Yeah.
test, right? That like if
Yeah.
most people would go, wait, is that a fucking hook-nosed person in charge of all the money who just loves like fucking scringing around and he's like a little short? He's got fucking scrappy beards. It's like, okay, well,
Look,
think
man,
that
if
that's
you look
true.
at goblins and see Jews, I have some very unfortunate news for
Right.
you.
No,
Do
if
you
you
guys-
see caricatures of
wait.
Jews and you see a Jew, then you're like, what the fuck? But goblins look
I
like
see a
caricatures
goblin.
of Jews.
Do you guys know that they actually do have an official race that does represent Jews? It's humans, actually.
Are you
You
for
can-
real?
Yeah,
Is this
I'm
a
for real. I'm for
Just
real.
saying,
Yeah, it's real.
historically, you can't deny
Can
that
you-
goblins were
Yeah.
used in European folklore as a stand-in for Jewish people.
No,
That's just
can
historic
we like
fact.
genuinely like integrate and go like, oh, when you build a world and you create characters in a
closeted
world,
racists in here.
No.
Right?
Can you engage with the
know.
fucking story and realize
I
that,
still have
that
more super
Tolkien
chats,
was
but-
a guy living in the 1940s in Britain? Like, fucking look at the book and go,
Go
okay,
on,
when he
go on.
built the book,
Yeah,
he clearly
yeah.
modeled races
Tolkien is.
off
Go
of
on, yeah.
what?
Tolkien is. You're gonna.
Uh-huh.
What are you implying? Go on, keep going.
You're trying to bait him, but he's just being
don't
honest that
understand.
the guy was a product of his time. He didn't live in
100%. I'm
21st
not
century
saying we
America.
can
We're not
fucking-
holding him to a
we
to a
can't-
standard
I'm not
today.
saying
We're
we
just
can't
pointing
read
out
Lord of
stuff.
the Rings or enjoy it. I'm just saying, like, hey, 1940s.
Oh,
There's probably some
triggered much.
ideas in there that we can adjust a
I
little bit.
I really
still
want to.
enjoy it for what it
Churchill,
was.
and he said some
Is it
wild
so
stuff.
crazy?
Okay,
against
I really
races.
want to finish making my money, so I'm gonna keep reading these super chats. Thank you. I know that I love the energy though. It's top notch. Seriously,
Can you
do.
read Kusher Nada, who said Staxioms, you are a fucking retard? I just did. Okay.
Okay. He
Shout
didn't
out
pay
to
me for
Kusher.
that.
Oh,
So
no.
Kusher Nada.
That's just me.
Zephyr Hash for $2 says King Trumponia will make Ravnica great again. Thank you for the $2. And then finally, $5 from Multiculturalist James. Thanks for having the panel, Wick. I was wondering how much the panel saw the Hills D&D and racism segment. What's the panel's response to this? I don't know. We can ask them after, maybe in the after show or something. But
I'd say that's a different panel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
oh, and
Yeah.
maybe we can make it. This one's been fun. But for now, I do have one last question for the group, and then it's time to get to closings and things like that. And $20 more, just real quick. Thank you, JMac. Look, if you guys want this to go longer, you can just keep giving me money, and I'll keep reading it. Great conversation and content, Wick. Also, props to all the panelists, even the ones I vehemently disagree with. Takes guts. Defend your ideas, especially ones as bad as goblins are Jews. Heart emoji. And true. There are a lot of people who like to make a lot of comments in on Twitter, on Discord, in the chats. You're all cowards unless you come in and defend yourself, to be clear, to be quite frank with you. But fair enough. The glory goes to the ones who enter the arena. That said, the last question, if I can remember, because I got thrown off track by a super chat. Give us, for those of you who don't like the segments that we've talked about tonight in the Anticolonialism, can you give us one positive thing that you found in there, if anything? Just one.
No,
No positive in any of the things, okay?
I will not give this bullshit an inch. Keep
Of
your
course.
bloody ideologies out of my hobby.
Richard,
Good steel man.
well, That's his
I,
answer.
like I said, I think if he sees a great thing there, and often if you're inspired to do something, you can make something cool out of it. Maybe he could get it. Maybe he could make a setting out of it and show us what it is. In the context it is right now, it's sort of a out of place, misplaced idea. But if I was going to try to drag a positive thing out of it, I was like, well, at least I'm a little bit interested in what setting you would make.
Fair enough. Harmony.
I echo what Richard said. I think so. I don't have a problem with the Forge of Foes book. I really don't. Aside from, I think those 4 pages went on a little bit long and it was really preachy. And, I don't like being told what I can and can't do in my games, and that if I run stuff a certain way, it's colonialist. And yeah, this guy knows nothing about my games, just like I know nothing about any of y'all's games. And me telling you guys that you can't have morally gray characters would be absurd, which is something I was very careful to not tell you guys. I don't remember the question, so I'm just talking.
You
What's the
answered it at
question?
first. I asked
Okay,
what
cool.
positive can we find from
Oh,
the
from the book?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the book appears to be about designing your own monsters using different traits. And I think I haven't actually read it in that much depth. I actually skimmed a little bit of it. It seems pretty good for that.
Okay.
Like I said, I got nothing against the lazy DM, Slyflerish, whatever you want to call him. I think that writing was cringy and out of place, and I didn't like how preachy it was. But I mean, the guy seems solid. Other than that, like I don't know him.
Well, he wouldn't be a liquid or a gas. Okay, to the other
Mhm.
side, right?
And you say our jokes are bad.
Look, I have an advantage roll on these things. Okay, as the host, I have a laugh button somewhere I can press, and everyone laughs, but I don't know where that button is because I'm old and I forget things. Okay, that said,
Or it's because no one's left.
Staxioms, tell us one.
Yeah.
Can you not see the opposite question for you, team
Mhm.
you guys, right?
Mhm.
Can you not see that it is kind of insulting to say, oh, hey, if you play this way, it's harming. And he does use the word, it's harmful to the world. The world's evils come from this way of thinking. If you're playing this way, it is implied that you might be propagating harmful stereotypes, etc. Can you not at least admit that there was a better way to say what he wanted to say?
No, for sure. I think that he shows himself as a writer who lacks nuance. When that's really all he's advocating for, which is kind of ironic. So like I do think that the way that uh right, is a guy, like he shares his bullet points, like it feels really preachy and it feels really um out of place and shoehorned, and I think that that's the problem. The problem isn't being woke, or the problem isn't trying to integrate interesting geographical stories or moral lessons into your writing. The problem is when you fucking hit your reader over the head with it, and I think that that's kind of what he was doing, and I think
Okay.
that that's the issue. And I'm not in support of everything that he said.
Gotcha.
But I think that
Confluence.
we could steel man it and it's fine.
Confluence. Same question.
Yeah, I think I mean I have to agree the whole article is preachy and insipid and graining, but at the same time I think there's a kernel of truth there, and I wish the article would have just focused on these are how you can make your games better by making more three-dimensional characters, add life, add nuance to your stories, and approach it from a more pragmatic way instead of it feeling like it's trying to morally shove a political agenda down your throat, because I think that turns off a lot of people, and it's just there's better ways to do it that will appeal to a broader range of people in a more effective way.
Lastly, Tyler.
I'm gonna have to disagree. I think that you could have been much ruder, much worse. You could have called somebody names. You could have attacked somebody. You could have impugned somebody's integrity. In a lot of ways, I just see suggestions. And sure, if it comes off a little preachy or whatever, I agree there. I don't like the use of the buzzwords. I find that's probably where
Yeah.
people get the biggest. Like, if you took colonialism out and then just defined it in its place, I feel like it'd go over a lot better. The men's rights thing, if it was some other group that wasn't so politically charged, I think that would go over better. But otherwise, like, I agree with it, and I don't see it as like an attack. I don't know the context of this. I can't say if it's out of place or not. Is this from like a data book? They
It's
just
Um,
took
the
it.
Forge of Foes. It was it's a guide, a supplement to how to create monsters, your own monsters, to design a monster, basically.
And he took that snippet out of that book and wrote over it in his own book.
No, that's
No,
the,
that's
no,
his
that's the book.
book.
It's a
That's the book
small
it's
excerpt
from.
from the broader book of
Oh,
creating monsters and tips on how to do it.
He
that's
did.
kind of like the Final Fantasy IX guidebook had some stupid little snippets that lead you to their Play Online website. Kind of felt out of place as well. And they let them write their data books all
Okay,
they want.
fair enough. Okay, gang. This has been a panel. Okay, it's been a panel. If you like this content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We do these kind of conversations all the time. Usually it's a little more political, but I like D&D. I like storytelling. I like tabletop RPGs, and I like talking about it. And usually my D&D shows flop, but this one's been a great success. So thank you all for being here. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're gonna have some folks on. A non-smoker is gonna be on. Paula Wright and a few others. We're gonna talk about American hegemony. Is it a positive force in the world, or is a multipolar world the way to go? That will be a fun discussion. Then on Thursday, we're going to have a few people on. Xerxes going to come on, the soy pill. We're going to have a few others. We're going to talk about what it means to be a modern man. And that should be a fun discussion as well. So if you like that kind of stuff, tune in. Great content this week. And next week, we're going to have even better. I will end with this, and then we will go to closings. And everyone, I have links to all their stuff in my description. Please click those links. Support these people. They have spent the last 2 hours, okay, arguing for your entertainment.
With some retards.
Reward them for it. Give them follows, give them subs, give them all these things. Help them out. They're people too, okay? I will end with this quote from one of my favorites, actually, from the Gulag Archipelago. And I think that this applies to this discussion. Even with hearts overwhelmed by evil, one small bridgehead of good is retained. The line that separates good and evil passes not through states, not through races, not through classes, not through splat bucks, not through settings, not between political parties, right? But right through every human heart. Okay? So, gang, I
Human
like
heart.
I
Only
like that.
those.
I love it.
Not
I love
goblins.
it. Right? Not goblins, none of these.
orcs,
Through
not
human
elves.
hearts. Okay.
I
But
mean, you did say you were going to show us how to be racist against fictional creatures.
yes. Let's give it to let's start with Jack, end with Tyler, and we'll just go around. Jack,
Are we doing
closing
call-ins?
thoughts, and tell people where they can find you, and closing thoughts on the subject, and then yeah, go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gents. Well, my name's Jack. The internet knows me as @LostLawScholar. You can find me on X and YouTube under that moniker. Look, I love fantasy. I love immersing myself in worlds that are very typically not mine. I don't want to have to deal with politics ever. I despise politics on a very visceral level. And I don't want to be reminded of every little thing of the world's current troubles when I sit down to play in a medieval fantasy setting to kill some orcs with my friends or to rescue a princess from a dragon. That's it.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I hope you had fun. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah. Well. First of all, whether we agreed or disagreed on different points, you all are great. It was fun chatting with you, arguing with you, and doing whatever. Great bunch. And I would say just this thing, and this is, like I said, I think this piece was in the wrong place and all that kind of thing. But I also think, Sly Flourish, I think to date has done a lot of mechanical type books. And I think he stepped into like world building, narrative, world. And that is another different realm of complication. And I kind of feel a little bad. So I would say, disagree vehemently if you like. But just remember, there's a human under there. Don't be too mean.
If there was a null under there, however.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
thank you.
Yeah, no, Knowles.
Fuck those knolls.
Thank you for being here, Richard. Really appreciate you. You can find a link to his Twitter in the YouTube description. If you haven't followed him yet, please do so. Staxioms, go ahead.
Yeah, not much else to say. I think I kind of did my thing. I genuinely don't talk a lot about like fantasy and D&D and world building. I'm kind of a politics guy. Unlike Jack, so we'll probably never meet in the same corner again. Thank God. It's a joke. I love you, Jack. You're great. Okay. You can follow me on Staxioms basically everywhere. I mostly post on TikTok and YouTube and Twitter. Thanks for having me, Wick. Are we doing Collins afterward? Because a lot of people are trying to fight me in the
Maybe.
comments,
We'll
and I
see.
need them to come in and
Tell
fight
you what,
me.
if I can get $100, and by the time the things end, I'll do
Oh,
Collins.
jeez,
So
that's
yeah,
Oh,
give me
that's
money.
nothing for
Masterful
J-Mac.
business move.
$100.
It is. If you want more
J-Mac's
content,
fucking
pay me. I don't do this shit for
podcast.
free. What are you talking about, right? If you pay me $100 in either super chats, gifted subs, whatever, we'll keep the content going. These people obviously aren't required to stay, but I will.
J-Mac
keep
and
going.
Artemis, where you at, boys?
Are you done, Staxioms, or do you need to say more? Okay, done. Harmony, please.
Yeah, I think in closing that an imaginative writer. Ooh, Collins are happening.
J-Mac.
All right,
thank
do it.
you.
You're gonna
Okay.
interrupt me anyway. Do it.
No, J-Mac,
Oh,
thank you
okay,
for the
okay.
$100. That's all I want to say. We are going to have Collins after
Whoa.
this. Appreciate you. Go ahead, Harmony.
All right. In closing, I just want to say that imaginative writers and world builders can certainly make a unique and beautiful story out of the subjects of good and evil that don't involve every single character and every single race being morally gray. Though certainly you are welcome to do it with morally gray characters too. No one's going to stop you. I did want to come here and defend the idea of existential evil in games. You can follow me on Twitter. I like to post a lot about my personal D&D game, which was made by the players. The players did the world building, and our existential evil in our game is a group of spider people called the Arachno-Capitalists. But anyway, so I had to say that. I have to say that every stream. I have to talk about my D&D campaign every stream. But so please follow me there. And other than that, this was a great panel. It was great to meet all of you.
Well, thank you. Gang, give her a follow. She's great. We love Harmony here. We need to have her on more often. So reward her for coming so she'll be bribed to come on more often. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Confluence, another great person. I love Confluence. Go ahead.
Thanks, Wick. I'm Confluence 358 on YouTube. I'm a conservative political commentator on there. I just made a recent video about Destiny, calling him out. So, watch that video. Very aggressive. And yeah, I think I've said everything I need to say. The only thing I didn't get into is I think that how you act in a fantasy setting does reflect in real life, and there's actually studies that bear this out that we didn't get a chance to go into. So but ultimately, I think you'll make better worlds if you play this way. But I agree, the article is preachy, but just give it a shot. Think about adding more nuance and depth into your gaming sessions.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Check them out, gang. And just for everyone's information, we will get to as many people as we can. I see you guys jumping backstage, and some of these people have to go. So they are not going to be held hostage here. But if they want to stay, they're more than welcome to stay. Yeah, check out Confluence. Give them a follow. Last but certainly not least, Tyler.
All right. A lot of arguments we heard here were people don't want morality forced into their game that were on the subject. And as soon as SA got brought up by Confluence, everyone was like, no, I don't want that at my table. I wouldn't play at your table if you're playing this way, blah, blah, blah. So everyone does want the ideology at their game. They just want their own ideology in the game. In a sense, it's to keep your ideologies away from mine. I guarantee if Nick Fuentes showed up at any of your tables, you'd be like, all right, get the fuck out of here, dude. We don't want to start using racist names for everything. So that being said...
He said he was going to pipe on my house once. I've talked to him.
Know?
Yeah, he
Now
said
you
he was
know
going
where
to
he
pipe
lives,
on my
so
house. But anyway, go ahead, please. It's
please
just
do
a
it back
funny
to him.
story, yeah.
So yeah, nobody's arguing to get rid of good and evil as a theme on a micro or a macro level. Just don't attribute it to a full race. The point is just, stop treating this entire race of people with no nuances, this monolithic bad guy from a Sega Genesis video game that has a palette swap. Every time they come on screen, you just kill them over and over. They have the same set of moves. Just because you play Call of Duty, you don't turn around and do a mass shooting. Doesn't mean that the habits being built from monolithically grouping an entire race together and attributing bad features to them doesn't bring forth the tribalism inherent to all human beings and get you to start othering people. We never even got to my section about agency where gnolls are being force-fed magical creatures to have sentience forced on them and then given orders. Zombies are under control. Worgans are slaves. Werewolves are people with sicknesses. Uruks are child soldiers. We didn't even get to touch any of that. So I still had some stuff in the tank ready to go as well. On Friday, I will be on Admiral Gibbs' channel arguing with Scott Fabian Liberty on U.S. interventionism and hegemony. He's a libertarian, going to be arguing for isolationism, so I will be tuning in tomorrow to take notes.
Okay, thank you for being here. Give him a follow. His Twitter's in my bio. You can check him out, or my YouTube description. Okay, with that, we're going to end the show, the official show. If you need to go, I get it. If you want to stay for call-ins, you're welcome to stay for call-ins. Bye to those who need to go. But with that, we're going to bring people one-on-one. They can ask the panel a question, and when I'm bored with them, I will send them to the void.
It is past midnight, and my wife is keeping the bed warm, so I'm going to go and do human things away from the internet.
Have fun.
I have to go make a game. So
Go make a game, brother. Go make a game. Thank you for being here.
But thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
I did.
Good
It
to
was
see you
fun.
again, Richard.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
Will Harmony
nice
at
to
least
meet
stay
y'all.
for your side for a little?
Maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
We'll get what we can in then.
Okay.
Okay, you were our first.
Hey, bud.
What do you got for the show?
Hang on, I actually wrote things down for the first time, but also hi Wick, it's been a while. I'm still in
hello.
here. Hi, buddy. I also so I just wanted to say,
How am I the biggest virgin here?
I just
Jesus
wanted to
Christ,
say,
Wick.
I just wanted to say that I have not read the document that everybody is referring to. Just I wanted to preface with that, but I did want to say that the majority of the issues that had been brought up are easily solved during the session 0. Just calmly explaining to people like, hey, these are things that may show up in a game. If you're uncomfortable with any of them, that may push you to a point that it should be uncomfortable beyond the bounds of a story that you're trying to have fun with. Say so now, and you can even get them a way to do so anonymously.
Is this me or him?
No, it's
That's
him.
Okay. He turned into a robot.
Yeah. Sorry, Meth Merlin.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling in, brother.
Could I respond? Because I feel like I got
Yeah,
the
go
gist
ahead.
of what he was saying. I agree with you. Because basically what he was saying is like, hey, front load your D&D party. I agree. I have very politically based D&D stories. Like when I do sessions, there's almost no monsters. It's almost always the conflict between like countries and parties that like disagree with each other, and like how to reconcile that is at the heart of every D&D campaign I've ever done. I just tell the players, I'm like, hey, if this isn't your vibe, that's fine. That's just not mine, and I'm the DM. So like, much love, but like, go find a different campaign. That's fine. So I agree.
Any other comments on this?
I mean,
He's right. Like I talk to my players about it. I specifically tell them before the campaign, there are going to be a lot of monsters in my games, and none of them are ever meant to represent any real world group of people. That's a thing I tell my players because I don't want to be accused of that. But yeah. No, I think it's good to set expectations.
Good comment, Sir Merlin, Sir Ace, and it has been a while.
Is my microphone all right now?
Thank you for calling in, buddy. We do have a line, and we do have a limited amount of time.
I just wanted to say one thing before I go.
One thing.
I just wanted to say it is also your place as a DM to put forward ethical dilemmas and thus the lessons therein from your choices that you choose.
Okay. Thank you for calling in, buddy.
I agree completely with that. Yeah.
That's pretty based.
We haven't seen Ace in a while. I'm glad he's doing well. I thought he may have died, but he did not.
Oh.
Let's bring in the next guest, and I'll try to go in the order that you guys came in, but forgive me if I mess it up. Hello, you're live.
Hello.
Hey, what you got for us?
So my view on all of this, and I'm going to preface this by saying I started D&D in the 90s, so not OG, but close, is that My issue with this whole thing is the preachy tone, which you guys already talked about, but it's also that there needs to be an implied default. The implied default has always been based on mythology, that orcs, goblins, gnolls, etc. are monsters. That's the default setting. If you want to have that in a campaign setting or a supplement or something that says, hey, we're doing something different, fine. I personally don't like the idea that it's supposed to be, well, somebody could find this offensive and bad, that all these races are evil. I'm going to use race because I'm old school, you know? But that all these things are evil, it's bad and it needs to change. Why does it need to change when you can just change it yourself?
Can I have a question about because I feel like you're kind of talking out the side of your mouth right now. Aren't we just changing the default setting? Isn't that fine? Because you're just saying, hey, we need a default setting and you can change it yourself.
Well,
I mean, why update the game at all? Why not just go D&D, the very first D&D from the 90s, never update it, have it as bulky as it was back then, and then if people want to clean it up, then we can. You know what I'm saying?
so you're right, and the default setting changing is fine. It's always been the preachy tone of this
Right. So
needed to change because it's bad. Never it's the default is fine, and we're going to change it. It's you look at modern D&D, for example, 2024. They changed a lot of things, and I won't get into that, but it was these old things were bad, so we changed the default. If it didn't have that first part, and it was we're changing it, okay, some people wouldn't like it, whatever. But the problem is that it doesn't need to be this was bad, because that implies if you like it, you're bad by association.
just to be clear, I have read the D&D 2024 Player's Handbook. I love it. I think it's great. I think they made two changes that you can consider preachy, and I want to be clear about what those changes are. First is they changed race to species. They didn't make a paragraph out about it. They just have the chapter. The chapter is now called species. They didn't explain why. They're just like, it's species now. Second thing, species has a lot less traits associated with it. Now it comes from your background instead, so that species can be a little bit more dynamic. Again, they didn't make a paragraph about it. They're just like, here's how backgrounds work now. I don't see a problem with that because I don't see that that's preachy at all. They're subtly changing it. Honestly, unless you were very familiar with the original 5e, you wouldn't even notice it. If you're a new player, you're like, I don't like, there's no paragraph explaining this. So I don't see the preachiness.
I want to
think
give it just
so.
real quick. I want to give it to Harmony because I'm curious if you agree. You're kind of like the only representative of your side
So
here.
right, I agree like 99% with
Mhm.
what Noble Shield said, actually.
Okay.
Very based. But I do think so. I haven't actually read the 2024 stuff, and I probably won't because it doesn't affect my game. But I do think they also changed the subtype of a lot of monstrous races to from humanoid to like fae or monsters, like gnolls and goblins and others, I think.
I'm going to
Were
be really
changed to
pedantic
reflect
here.
that,
That's the
yeah.
monster manual, not the player's handbook.
Oh,
The
I'm
monster
sorry.
manual
You're
has not
correct.
come out
Yep.
yet.
Yep, you're correct. It was
but
it was a
it's
thing I read recently that they were changing. Yep.
This is why
Virgin.
you're the virgin.
true. I
This
know.
is
I'm
why.
fucked.
No, you're correct. I just meant in the new 2024 stuff or 2025, I guess.
Sure. I was just
the
referencing
monster
the player's
manual.
handbook.
And
But like,
Staxioms wonders
yeah.
why I call him the virgin of the group. But
shut
fair
the
enough.
fuck.
Yeah.
I can't
Ooh.
fucking hate this shit.
Noble, you kind of came in and made the same point that everyone's making the whole debate.
I need to pee. I'll be
that-
right back in 5 minutes.
And that like you don't want their
How's it nothing
standards
to do?
pushed on you, and you feel as though it's preachy that the tone that they deliver these things to you. But like, if the standard was separation of people based on skin color, and someone came to you and said that's bad, we should probably change that, you'd be like, yeah, I agree, that's pretty bad and looks a little racist. We should probably change that. So like you're just disagreeing with the change itself, or with the actual. You don't think the change is worth making. The juice is worth the squeeze, essentially.
Right.
And really it comes more down to you disagreeing with this being a bad thing and not about changing the game in the first place.
Right.
So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because like
Okay.
at the end of the day, like, you know, I have a whole you saw my argument on that, so I'm not gonna reiterate.
Okay, so that's
but-
interesting. So you would be fine with changes if you thought they were morally necessary. Like if it divided human races and gave them different intelligence scores based on what ethnicity you are amongst the humans, you would think that would be a needed change.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel, okay, that's kind of, why are you doing this?
Right. Okay, so you just don't think that these current ones are necessary. Because that would also be implying that the old way of playing is bad if you gave
Right.
different humans different.
Yeah, it's mostly because the monsters are based on mythology, and it seems a lot of the modern game has moved away from the literary and mythological roots of the game, and not for the better, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Right.
Noble,
That's
thank you for calling
I
in.
oh man,
Last
I
comment then.
totally
Harmony.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to talk more about other literature and stuff during this, but it was just Tolkien because I'm sorry. Go on. Go
No,
on.
it's fine. Like
Um,
again, we had a limited
mhm.
time because everyone has
I
limited
know.
time. But you
I
know
know.
what? Here's the thing: we can just do things. We can have another
Yeah.
discussion on this another day, and we can set that up. But fair enough. I understand. There's so much to pull on, and we can only talk about so much. But Noble, thank you for calling in. I really appreciate you, and have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Could we just preface to like beasts and like beastly creatures, dragons, things like that? We're not arguing for that. It's the sentient creatures. Why
Dragons
are
are
they?
sentient, but
Dragons are
Are they?
sentient
Are
in
they?
almost
They have a
every setting.
language?
Dragons are
of them?
sentient. They have a
Yes, they
language.
do have
It's
a
called
language.
Draconic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My bad. My
it's
bad.
called
Fucking
draconic.
idiot, this
I mean-
virgin who doesn't know that dragons speak
No,
Draconic.
that's
They have an
probably
intelligence
evidence
of like
he's less of a
16
virgin.
minimum.
But
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. The beast.
Dumbass.
The
okay,
non-sentient
Nano.
virgin.
We have a guest. Nano.
I got him.
Nano. Nando. Nana Mando's biscuits. Says
Hello,
David.
hello.
Hey, what you got for us, sir?
What's up, nerds? So I just have a quick question. What is the purpose of telling a story? Like for the storytellers who, it seems like everyone that's on this panel are really passionate about telling meaningful stories with very dynamic characters. Am I wrong in that assessment?
I think
Yes,
that's fair.
you are wrong.
It
In
depends.
that,
a
What?
little
for me,
bit,
for me, you're wrong in that assessment. Yeah.
It
You're right.
depends.
You're
Okay,
right for me.
You're right for me as well.
Because we were talking about Doom
Okay.
as well. It depends on the context. Sometimes you don't really want to go in depth into a story, but
Sometimes
generally,
you just want entertainment. I concede that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
would not
So,
characterize myself that way. No.
okay. So is the purpose of the story more so for entertainment in general, right?
yeah.
I would say that the story in my games is a byproduct of what the players do and not necessarily the point of the game. So I guess
I'm
I
not
can't answer that. Yeah.
okay.
What if,
So
what if the
I'm not
players wanted to make
necessarily
it?
Let him finish his point. Let him get to his point, or
Sorry.
he'll never get there.
I'm not necessarily talking about D&D. I'm talking about
Okay.
story writing in general. So like reading
Oh, okay.
or books and story writing is the purpose of it, right? Is for entertainment value, right? Like you want to entertain someone, you want them to gain some sort of enjoyment or entertainment out of what you write. Even
Okay.
even in your D&D campaigns, you want people to have fun and be entertained, right?
Sure. I apologize. I misunderstood what you were saying, but yes, that
Okay.
is one of many purposes.
Okay. So with that being said, the whole purpose is for entertainment. And
One of the purposes is for entertainment.
yes,
He's gonna keep going unless you get him to his point. Mando, what is your point?
well, the whole purpose is for entertainment, right? And, some people really are passionate about telling stories about dynamic characters and meaningful storylines, et cetera, right? But you have to find those people, right? You have to find who your target audience is. So
Yes.
I think there's not an issue with putting in aspects of certain things, certain topics, certain politics, et cetera, if that appeals to the target audience that you're focused on, right? What I think I have an issue with, and what most people have an issue with, is someone trying to dictate based on their perception and their opinion and their emotions, et cetera, what they're sensitive about on how someone else should create their art.
100%.
But
Okay.
isn't that being done on both sides here, right? Like
It is.
like you have people again saying, and I'm going to quote it again, weed them out table by table, and this is in direct comments to this, what we're talking about today, the little anticolonialism thing. Weed them out table by table, make them uncomfortable, take away their fun, and above all, prevent items like this from being profitable. That sounds like if
Sounds like
I
a
was
bunch
reading
of people
this
who don't
from
really play D&D who want to destroy someone
No,
else's
they for
hobby
sure play
because
D&D.
Ooh,
Go ahead.
Well, I
relatively.
mean,
Can we
It's
So-
Nerd
say?
Playing D&D for 30
Cognito.
years.
well,
Is a person
can you
who's,
really
yeah.
say that when they're like take
Yes.
away someone else's fun and take the money
Yes.
away and ruin the
Yes.
hobby? Like,
Yes.
So
I guess I don't know.
Go
It doesn't sound
Harmony.
like somebody that is passionate about D&D would say something like that.
Go ahead, Harmony.
yeah, so yeah, I know who said that. Uh, it's someone I'm vaguely associated with. I just want to say that I don't I don't condone those statements. I don't think that's right. The only part of that I agree with is make sure things like this aren't profitable, because that's all we can do is vote with our dollars. Like,
The only
Yeah.
thing that
buy
I agree
things.
with.
Yeah.
The only thing I disagree with is the target. Honestly, if that was coming from our side, it's based, but when it's coming from the other side, it's bad. That's morals for you. It's basically I can do whatever I want if it's coming from my side.
Yeah, Nano, this is the same thing the last guy said. Like, you're also putting your moral judgments into your world. If you went into somebody's house and they were running a D&D where racial segregation and assaulting women was something they were all enjoyed and were having fun, and you wouldn't get uncomfortable and say something, or you'd participate in
No,
it. Yeah.
no,
I
I wouldn't.
believe.
Okay. I've been in one campaign and I played as an elf who had slaves. No, it's not something that offends me. No,
Okay, fair
no, it
enough.
doesn't. Because it's a fantasy. It's a story.
This
It's
man is
not
incredibly
real.
based.
Honestly
No,
It's
based.
not
Incredibly
real.
based.
Honestly
No,
based.
genuinely, I think that a story is better if it has slaves on it so that it can make commentaries on slaves. Like, I think that those stories.
Yeah, it
I'm being
touches on the
unironic. Like,
morality.
I'm being unironic. Like, I really think
I
that like
agree.
having the like shitty fucking aspects of human experience in your story so that you can look at it and you're like, oh fuck, what the hell is this? And the players
Yeah.
interact with it makes for more dynamic storytelling.
This is
I
this
wanna-
is why the dark elves are so great, because they have that dichotomy. They
I-
have the Loth elves and they have the Elsie elves.
Mando, I
Right.
love you, buddy,
Yes,
but I
yes.
want to get to as many
Okay.
people as I can. So
Thanks, Wick.
have
Later,
a
everybody.
wonderful day.
Staxioms wants to keep up Robert E. Lee statues, is what I just heard.
Okay. Jeb Tan.
Saxium, we agree on that. That was good. Oh, it's Jeb
Hello,
Tan.
hello.
Hey.
Sorry, I had to mute the tab.
Jeb
Hello.
Tan, what you got?
Hello.
So I have 2 bones to pick. I have one annoying meta conversation thing I'm going to pick on, and then I will have the conversation that I don't like that you guys are having.
Okay,
So,
but remember,
my-
you are one person in the line,
Yeah.
so
That's why I
concise.
did. Hey, I was going to get to it quick,
go.
but I've just been held
Which
up now. I
keeps
just hit a stop
interrupting
suck.
you.
Yeah,
What the
go
fuck
on.
is this?
No, so meta conversation issue is I don't know why this became a conversation about what helps write better stories, because even the guy making that book didn't say he made that chapter to help you write better stories.
Incorrect.
He said he did it because there is we should be looking at the moral implications of our
Incorrect.
game.
He says
He
it makes better
specific-
stories.
He
specifically
says it
that, right?
also makes better stories, but he said I can't change the world with this book, but we do have a responsibility in our games
He said
to
both.
do
It's
the
a dual-
moral
it's a
thing.
He
dual-
said both.
Yeah.
He said both. It's dual.
Then-
it's like, hey,
but
this
the
is
issue
morally
is-
good and it makes for
But the
better
issue
stories.
is,
So we were having
you
both
guys
conversations.
have not really, because you guys keep saying like, I wish it didn't sound so preachy. I wish he didn't frame it in such a preachy way. It didn't
Right.
sound preachy. He didn't frame it in a preachy way. He is saying as important as the story element is the moral element. I think you are equally immoral and a bad storyteller if you don't do this.
No, because
that's what
here's
he's
the thing.
saying.
Here's the thing. Can I make an argument? I would love. Here's the
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
I think that genuinely, if you approach like fucking the quartering or something, and you're like, which is more woke? Like, if they've got like a tier list of like the most woke movies, Avengers Endgame is like number 1, and Black Panther doesn't even fucking make the list because fucking Avengers Endgame has that cringy ass female where they're all like together and they're like, oh, women power, and they like none of them even know each other. It's like, why the hell is that in the movie? Black Panther is an integrated, cohesive story where the black female fucking, I don't know what the hell they're called. The black
Black
women
people
who
are called
like-
people,
who are, like,
sir.
you
They're
know,
called
racist.
people, okay?
I mean, Black Panther kind of sucks.
They're called
But
people.
It
No,
didn't.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
They're integrated into the story, and the director was clearly like had a moral purpose to it, but it felt embellished into a story that made cohesive sense. So people
Kinda.
don't call it woke because they don't like. It's not woke that's the problem. It's shoehorning. It's
Sure,
fucking-
again, and I'm not talking about what the problem is. I'm talking about this guy said equally important to the better storytelling is the fact that you have a moral
No,
responsibility.
I'm
to tell
saying Brian
stories this
Coogler
way.
might believe that, but he integrates it into the story so you don't feel it. That's my point.
The issue is in his book where he's telling you how to tell a story, he did not cohesively integrated. He said,
I agree.
but that's the thing is, it wasn't like he made it sound a certain way, but he meant it a better way. It was his goal was a bad goal. His goal was to morally preach, and he did that, and it was probably not in place. Now, to have the
disagree.
conversation about the
truly
better
disagree, right.
storytelling, I think you can have absolute evil and still have very nuanced storytelling, because sometimes the lens isn't on the villain. We've gotten really obsessed in like really, really modern cinema of like putting the lens as much on the villain as the hero, because we've realized a lot of our hero characters are kind of thin character-wise, like Batman and Superman and people like that.
Don't fucking talk shit
But
about
if
Batman.
you
Batman's awesome.
but if you look at like Harry Potter's a great example of like there's an absolute evil villain. She gave like a literal like magical reason why Voldemort is absolutely evil. He can't feel emotions because he came out of a love potion, so he can't do it. That is absolutely evil. And the story is about how far is the character who wants to be good willing to go. How like the villain is he willing to be in order to defeat absolute evil? And that is just as nuanced and interesting as story is. And for a story that is necessarily protagonist focused, it is necessarily focused on the people at the table. I think sometimes the most interesting stories are you do have the Nazi, right? And how Nazi are you willing to be to defeat the Nazi? Because that's what they said about it back then. Was the Hitler
How
said
Nazi
about
are you willing to
socialism.
be? Yeah.
That's what Hitler said about socialism. He's like, the power of socialism is that in order to beat socialism, you have to be willing to be a little socialist. Like
Never
he's
go
forcing
full
the world
Nazi.
to be
Okay.
like him, to attack him. That's what Voldemort wanted out of Harry. That's what Sauron wanted out of Frodo.
Here's my
Like,
problem. I think that that's actually the worst part of Harry Potter, and me and my buddies talk about that love potion bullshit from Voldemort as like the cringiest part of that whole series. And honestly, I think that that's the weakest part of the series. You got to get rid of it, and Voldemort has to have better motivation. Like, I think that Harry Potter's a good series. The whole just, oh, well, he was just born evil and there was nothing he could do about it, and he just hates everyone. I find that really stale.
So, Jeb, I will say I will retract my statement that there is better content than just the Bible for the good versus evil story. My bad. You make a good point.
because that's my thing is it's like you can say that the justification is a little thin and whatnot with Harry Potter, but you would fundamentally lose so much of the Harry Potter side and the Hermione Granger and the Ron Weasley side of that story if you spent so much time talking about these nuanced motivations of Voldemort. Because the whole point of making the protagonist story is you're seeing how far was Harry willing to go? How dark was he willing to get in order to beat the darkness?
I agree. You can have that and have when we fucking go into the Pensieve or whatever and we find out more about Voldemort. It's not just, oh, he drank a love potion, that's why he's evil. We could maybe, like, we spend all that time in Voldemort's backstory anyway. Yeah, sorry. We spend that much time in Voldemort's backstory anyway. You might as well make it complicated.
Okay.
Like, I don't think that
I don't think we gain anything from it.
Does Harmony have anything to say? And if not,
yes, actually.
go ahead.
Jebtan, when you said that the lens is on the hero, and so you don't necessarily know everything and you're working off incomplete information for the other side, that's something I was trying to get across early in the show. You said it with much more eloquence, so thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, no, it's sort of like the trees in the foreground of a picture versus the trees in the background. You're going to have some villains that you want a high level of resolution on, but your goblins and your gnolls, a lot of times they're foot soldiers, they're obstacles, they're in the way, and sometimes it is enough just to get a beat on how your characters are morally dealing with problems that they have an excuse to be pretty gross about, is throw them something that is obviously evil, that they kind of do have license to be as gross as they want to be against, and see how they behave. Do they still bring morality in or do they not? It gives you a vibe of like, is your party morally degrading, and do you want to start introducing some story elements to challenge that? Well, the only way to test it is how do they behave when they have license to behave however they want. And having goblins and having gnolls is a really good tool for that.
You know,
thank you
I
for
agree.
thank you for calling in, Jeb. I hate to cut you guys off, but line. I will say that being a streamer gives me license to be as evil as I want to be, and I just want to say you should
all right, see you
judge
guys.
yours. See you later, Jeb.
Jeb just advocated for Jim Crow. Okay, cool.
Okay, we only got. Oh,
have to get
you gotta
going.
go, Harmony.
Yeah, I have to get going.
Yeah,
Appreciate you. You guys gotta come.
Oh no. Okay.
I'll stick around one last question. Just one question.
Yeah,
it's
he's been
very
here.
simple.
All right.
Very simple question. Is D&D a war game?
Yes.
That's simplistic.
Wick, hold on. No, Wick, no answers.
Yes.
It's overly simplistic. I'm never
Yes.
going to say yes or no to any of those.
Quinn,
Like,
It's-
what
I
is
will.
genre?
I will.
It started solely as a war game.
Yes.
Now I think it's a mix.
I would say there are some games
started as a
that
war
it's
game.
pretty
I
easily,
play it
and
as a-
some games like I campaign, they're not at all.
I love this question. Yes, I think it is. I play my campaign like a war game. Oof, you're gonna get me started on my campaign.
Is this
I
what is this the kind of thing? This is the first question that you had to answer from Wick, isn't it? That's how you get on these panels, because that's what Wick said, and it's crazy to think that D&D is a war game. There's no way you guys actually believe this.
I do actually. Yeah.
Depends on
I
there's.
can
Hold on,
explain it, but it's
let
a
Harmony
really,
sell
really
it.
long
Is one.
Sell it,
explanation.
It's not
Harmony.
now.
Go
Oh
ahead.
my god, I was so getting out of here. All right.
Drag you back in.
I know,
I was
right?
just
This
about to
is like
say.
okay. So I believe that if played correctly, or okay, maybe I don't want to get into the argument of the one
You're
true way
starting
to
it.
play.
You're
But
starting it.
I
Keep
know,
going.
right?
Don't back
I
out
believe
now. Be brave.
I think
Say I'm a piece of shit.
that if D&D is played with certain parameters
This
that
is the
were
police that are coming to get you for your take
that were
right
I
now.
know, right? You can hear them. I think if D&D is played with certain rules that were outlined in some of the original documents, then it will take the form of a war game, and it was derived from war games. And I think that campaigns that are played with these origins in mind are like nothing I've ever played before, man. They're amazing. I can go on, but I don't know if you want the long explanation because I totally run my game like a war game. Yeah.
Okay. Confluence, you were saying it was a mix, right?
I think it has its origins in a war game, but I think now it's going to be table by table. I think that you could have Harmony, she runs a war game, and I think you could have equal people running completely different games. I think D&D has become so open-ended and so imaginative that I think you could run D&D for like a variety of reasons. And so it sounds like the way that I want to play D&D is more similar to Stax than it is to Harmony, and I think that's okay. And hers is going to probably look
Very
more like a
leftist
war
of you.
game than ours.
Yeah,
I'll invite you to my next
Okay.
campaign.
Well,
thank you.
what a fun time.
Okay.
Gang.
I can't help myself. I think if you play it with a consistent time flow and you have a fog of war where players are giving orders, and while they're forced to work together in the game, there is kind of a sub game going on where they have like this fog of war. Then you end up with players with very different goals, and they end up at the end game opposing each other. So yes, I do think it's a war game. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Don't ever apologize for the base
He asked-
takes, the correct stances, just destroying
You
the
gotta drink the
no-like
Kool-Aid here,
arguments
right?
of our
You don't
very
understand.
goblin-esque
Apologize a little
opponents
bit.
here.
You don't
right?
understand.
She
I
is
came
simply
here-
correct.
Oh, I came in here thinking like, okay, we're gonna talk about nulls and racism. I kind of hate that I got so involved in this topic, but I'll do it, whatever. And then he comes in as D&D a war game, and I'm like, oh, all right, yeah, let's do this.
We can do a longer segment another day, but I have to go.
Yes, I gotta get going too.
So
Thanks
I
for having
love
me
you, of course.
Thank you for the super based question.
Bye. Yeah, of
Bye-bye.
course, always.
Okay. With that, I'm gonna end the show. Gang, remember tomorrow 6 p.m. Eastern. Tune in. We got some more content. It's political, but look, isn't streaming just a D&D game at the end? It has factions, it has domain play, it has wheeling and dealing, it has backstabs, right? And you can make allies behind the scenes with other players, right? In order to gain influence, power, and money. What is streaming but a D&D war game? Okay, with that, I love you all. Bye-bye. Wait, bye-bye, everyone.
Love you.